just did it. It just jumped on just like that. That is not what I wanted. That is not what I wanted. I wanted to start off with a little count. Okay. It looks like we are live. Hopefully, you guys can hear me and everything sounds okay. I'm actually trying out a new streaming setup. It's not just like a layout different. It's like the software behind the scenes is also different as well. I'm kind of just experimenting. Figured might as well try it out for this little Q&A we'll be doing tonight. Yeah, and the Q&A is a little bit of a celebration because we have hit 30,000 subscribers like a day and a half ago. So, yay, we hit 30,000, which is definitely, a big improvement over where we were at the beginning of the year. So, I think we've gained about 20,000 subscribers since the beginning of the year ish, maybe 19-ish thousand. So we've almost about multiplied by about 3 times over this course of 8 months, 7.5 months, something like that. Which I think that I would say that's substantial. The goal is still to hit 50K by the end of the year, but we'll see what happens. We're one step at a time, and yeah, I am excited about what's to come. There is so much to talk about. Some of the things you may see in the title, but there's really a lot. I didn't know what to quite put in the title. We got multiple Metroid Prime 4 rumors. It feels like we're close to a reveal for Metroid Prime 4, but I've been down that road before, so I'm not gonna say for sure we're gonna see Prime 4 in September, but I do feel like we are getting closer and closer. Maybe we'll start to hear more and more. With all this Switch 2 reports and rumors, and even 3D Mario's involved. But even something more recent things, we're getting closer to the release for Mario Bros. Wonder, and more details are coming out for that little by little. And we have rumors about what's to come next year for the big Pokemon game. I'm hoping it's a Legends game. It's supposedly something Generation 5 related. Some people are saying it's like a Black and White 3, which will also still be really cool. So there's things in the distance. There's Mario Bros. Wonder, there's Mario RPG. There's probably going to be a Direct in September. There's really a lot to talk about. There's always Zelda to talk about too. So that's a good time. But yeah, that's what we're basically going to be just talking about. Anything, whatever you guys ask me, I will answer, provided it doesn't, it falls within, the terms of use on YouTube. So pretty much anything, you can ask me. I would prefer it to be about Nintendo just because that's interesting. But, if you want to ask me personal questions or advice or what have you, that's totally fine too. It's free game. But yeah, that's the general plan. We're going to be basically just focusing on the chat tonight. That's actually something else I've been wanting to do. Recently, I haven't been doing the Thursday night Q&As, which I was doing consistently for a few months. And mainly that's just because I haven't had time. This is not even a Thursday, it's a Friday, right? Things have just been kind of all over the place. I've moved several times. I had to take my cat to the vet several times. A lot of family stuff going on, a lot of changes, restructuring of my YouTube strategies. And I'm still not sure what we're going to do consistently. I'm not sure we'll do a Thursday or a Friday consistent stream, but maybe I will just try and make a concerted effort to do like a second stream per week. We'll see how things go. But let me test something out here. Let me see if this works. So what I want to do, there you go. There, so I can show chats on screen. That's what I wanted to do. Nintendo Prime, thank you, man. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the congratulations. my good friend or buddies in life and on YouTube. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it, buddy. I appreciate it. Let's see here. Let's look at the chat and let's just start doing some Q&A. Store Rose can't watch the show live, but I wanted to say congrats. You deserve your success. Thank you. Adam Roan, hello. All right, Giancarlo. It looks like okay. Let's start. All right, Giancarlo. It looks like Metroid Prime 4 level design is a evolution of Metroid Prime 3 level design. The game has some big open areas. Right into it. Guys, by the way, let me know how everything's looking and sounding. There should be background music. If it's too loud, if it's too quiet, please let me know. I can adjust that. Let me know if you guys can hear me well, too. That would be very much appreciated. I want to make sure everything sounds okay. I can't see the audio levels on this software, which is a little annoying. Maybe, again, this is an experiment. I might not use this long term. We'll see. Not being able to see the audio levels is annoying. Anyway, so to Giancarlo's question. It looks like Metroid Prime 4 level design is an evolution of Metroid Prime 3 level design. The game has some big open areas. So, for those that aren't aware, Nick Baker, the co-founder of Xbox Era and co-host of the Xbox Era podcast, who apparently has good sources, is a good source of inside information, rumors. During the podcast, they had a little rumor mill section, and he talked about a few things regarding a digital Xbox, a digital only Switch 2, potentially not as a primary, but as like a secondary option, and also Metroid Prime 4. Apparently, you know someone who's seen the game, and what he was told about it is that visually it's unbelievable, and that it looks very big and open. But he was quick to say he does not think open world, right? So there's a distinction to be made there, right? There's a difference between big open areas as opposed to being open world. And sometimes that may seem very blurred. Like a lot of Xenoblade games, there is a Xenoblade game that is open world, which makes this even more confusing. Xenoblade X is open world, but all other Xenoblade games, every Xenoblade game you will play on Switch until they bring X eventually, hopefully, but every Xenoblade game that's currently available on Switch is not open world, but a lot of people think it's open world because it's just kind of really big, large areas that you can explore. So, and we'll get to that. We'll get to the whole open world versus non and what that means and what it doesn't mean. But just so you guys have that in the background, like that's the rumor, right? So Giancarlo is saying that the level design of Prime 4 is an evolution of Metroid Prime 3 level design. Now, I'm assuming there's not any extra information that you've seen or heard that makes you say this beyond the rumor. We're just purely basing this off of the large open areas that's being discussed in the rumor. And, you know, I would like to, I mean, I've played Prime several times, Prime 3 specifically. I've played that a few times. And, I mean, I have the game. I could go back and kind of look at it. But me just trying to think of the environments, I don't specifically remember them feeling, well, I don't really remember there being a lot of really large open areas. I will say from what, and I have to go back and play it, but just kind of thinking on it, I do believe that Prime 3 definitely had more of a epic grand narrative, and there was a scope to that. I mean, and actually, you know, there were certain things that I did notice about Prime 3 versus 1 that definitely made it feel bigger. Like there were some areas where you had a better look at the environment around you. You couldn't explore everything off into the distance, but you could see things going on. Like the second level, it's not really level based, but the beginning of the game is a little segmented. There's kind of like an introductory area, and then there's like a second introductory area that you can revisit. And in this second area, there's like a battle that's going on. You see ships flying around and explosions and things going on. You can see that happening all off in the skies around you while you're exploring this kind of base. And there's different things going on there. And so there's scope to that, right? I do feel like it would be nice to kind of go back to Prime 3, and maybe they'll bring it over to Switch, and that's would be a good time to replay it. But kind of thinking on that, they wanted to go bigger, grander, right? They wanted to make it feel more epic. As much as they did, as much as I enjoyed Prime 3, I enjoyed Prime 3 very much. In terms of sales, it didn't like Prime 3 actually arguably did better than Prime 2 in terms of sales, but when you consider how many more people had a Wii versus the GameCube, like 5 times as much, it only sold twice as well as Prime 2. Like I think it sold a little over a million or something like that. So it was kind of disappointing sales wise. That all said, I do think that you could, if you want, you could look at Prime 4 as an evolution of Prime 3 potentially. Although I personally don't expect that won't like once we'll see how things shake out, right? But when Prime 4 comes, the impression I'm getting from the rumor isn't that it's going to be like a natural evolution of Prime 3, because Prime 3 was a lot more handholdy and a little bit more straightforward and linear than Primes 1 and 2. And I don't necessarily want that for Prime 4. And what's interesting about that was that you could say Prime 3, yeah, Prime 3 was a little bit more handheld, a little bit easier, perhaps more inviting to a larger audience. And yet, despite that, it still didn't sell well. So I don't know if that's the direction they should specifically go. So we'll see on that one. But definitely, I think they're going bigger for sure. They're going bigger, and going bigger can be exciting. But how do they execute? How does this impact gameplay, the overall gameplay loop of Prime 4? What does this mean exactly? And I think the large areas that we're going to see in Prime 4, the way it's being expressed in the rumor, in my opinion, there's nothing in Prime 3 that even comes close, right? Like Prime 3 levels and areas are only maybe marginally bigger than Prime 1's. Like I don't think it's anything that's like substantial in terms of scope. Like you can see more things happening off into the distance, basically. And that's kind of like the big difference. It's not like there's a lot more area to explore. Not really, nothing significant. Making the comparison to Halo Infinite, even though Halo Infinite's an open world, the idea of comparing it is that at first glance, when you see the vistas of Prime 4, it looks like a massive open world. Like that's how big the areas are. And there are games like that. That's why I brought up Xenoblade earlier. At first glance, Xenoblade looks like a massive open world because the areas are substantial. They're like giant biomes or ecosystems that you can explore with a lot to do in them. And maybe that's what we have to see the game, right? Like this is a rumor. We got to take it with a grain of salt. Even if what they're saying is true, how they interpret it, how they word it based off what they've seen, there's a lot of room. There's a lot of wiggle room there. So we kind of, I think we should be careful to make assumptions on exactly what it is. But there's definitely a lot of potential, a lot of different directions they can go with this. And I think it does bode well for the overall, I guess, ambition of the game. And we'll slowly dive more and more into it throughout the stream. But I'm going to continue on with the chat here. Let's see. Harry Myers with a super chat. Thank you for that super chat, Harry. Andres Ristato. Thank you. I appreciate the anime reference. I very much like that. I love it when you say that. I really do. It's awesome. Thank you. But going back to Giancarlo had something else to say here. Let's see. Giancarlo, I was hoping for at least a teaser for the game on the September Direct. I'm preparing my clown makeup for the probable lack of the game next month. That's an interesting other sort of talking point here. With these different rumors, we're starting to entertain the idea that Prime 4 is actually close to an actual reveal. Like we actually may get gameplay details. We may actually see footage of the game maybe in this upcoming September Nintendo Direct. Like that would be amazing. But as I think I suggested earlier, we've been down this road before where we're like, oh, maybe this is it, and it isn't, right? So let's take ourselves back to the weeks leading up to the June Nintendo Direct that happened this year. There was some doubt that the Direct would even happen, and I think maybe that impacts speculation somewhat. Yet, like the last few days, right? Like, I believe the Direct was happening. I mean, I think it was announced, or we had a good rumor at that point, or something. But there was definitely a back and forth on if it would happen or not. But going into the Direct, there was a belief that we would finally see Prime 4. It was a Direct in the summertime, typically that E3 window, which is usually the most exciting Directs of the year. We had just gotten Tears of the Kingdom, so there was kind of like this discussion. I mean, I presented this argument before that with Tears of the Kingdom now done, Nintendo may want to present something else. It's like very big and ambitious to excite Nintendo fans going forward. Prime 4, especially with these rumors, that seems to maybe be that potential product. But so there was that speculation, and then with Prime Remastered having come out last January, February, there was this belief, okay, Nintendo finally put out Prime Remastered. Does this mean that they are getting close to the release, right? And then also we had rumors suggesting that Prime 4 could be coming up by the end of the fiscal year, even potentially in this current calendar year. Some of that came from Nate the Hate, and I feel like it's the window is closed on Prime 4 even coming out on this fiscal year. I mean, really, it hasn't. The September Direct will decide that. But ultimately, the point is that we had these different things kind of making us think that Prime 4 was very likely to be showing off in the June Nintendo Direct. And did not happen. So, I say that. We're now entering the September Direct window, right? And if Prime 4 is supposed to be like a game to come out within the fiscal year, it has to happen in the September Direct, in my opinion. But at this point, I'm not so sure it is going to be even a game that comes out by this March. I think we have to wait a little bit more for that. We'll see. But, recently Andy Robinson said he's heard it's supposed to be like the last big Switch game. Okay. When we're now hearing the Switch 2 is coming out next year, but you hear about this ambition, how much it will be big and open, and it's visually unbelievable. Like, it makes you wonder, is this just going to be for Switch? Are they not going to tie us into Switch 2 in any way, shape, or form? So there's a lot of variables here that could impact the timing of when Nintendo wants to show this off and when this game is going to come out. I do believe this game is basically done. I'll go back to a rumor from the beginning of the year that myself and Nintendo Prime reported, because we had heard something from someone at a certain location that we took with a great deal of credibility, and they said Metroid Prime 4 is done, or basically done, like it's being tested on and stuff. And now we're seeing these job postings of QA testers and all that. It does feel like Prime 4 is nearly done, but that doesn't mean Nintendo can't sit on it for a while. So I say that basically to just argue that while a reveal in this September Direct could very well be the case, could very well happen, it's also totally possible that based off Nintendo's plan, even if the game is totally done, Nintendo will wait another few months, another half year, until they think it's the ultimate time to show it off. And I don't know what their plan is, right? I don't know if this is going to be a cross-gen game, or if it's going to be a Switch 2 launch title or a launch window, or if it's going to come out beforehand, or if they want to save it until next year to really give them a more consistent, steady lineup of games. When I say next year, I mean 2025, actually, like the year beyond 2024. There's all these possibilities. Now, I'm on team 2024 for Prime 4, but point is, there's a lot of variables. So going into September Nintendo Direct, do I have a hope and optimism that we can see Prime 4? Yes. But am I prepared to make a prediction and make a bet on it, like a gamble, say if this doesn't happen, I'm going to shave my head, or I'm going to lose a lot of money or something? No, I'm not. I don't feel that confident in it. So I'm just saying, let's prepare ourselves to not see it next month, right? Like, I want to. It could happen, but I am not all in on it being showed off next month because there's too many variables. We don't know what Nintendo's plan is with Prime 4. There's a lot of different ways they could handle this game, but we'll see. We'll see. Moving on with the chat here. All right, let's see here. Okay. What is this? Thank you, Joy CJ, for the congratulations. I very much appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron Raffs. Thank you, Israelite, so much. Really appreciate it, buddy. What's this? Korok Seed. Have you played the game Blasphemous? It's definitely a hidden game for real. I highly suggest it. I have not played Blasphemous. I will keep that in mind, though. Blasphemous. Okay. AB James. It seems this rumored new Donkey Kong game could be a base Switch game for the first half of next year after all. Especially Switch 2 is a holiday 2024 launch. You know, to tell you the truth, I think, and there's not like any inside info or any real hard reason why, but there's a part of me that wants to say that Donkey Kong, there is actually a reason why. I'll get to the reason, but part of me wants to say that Donkey Kong is more likely to be shown off in a September Nintendo Direct than Metroid Prime 4. And the reason I feel this way, in part, it's because we have Super Nintendo World, and the first expansion to Super Nintendo World is Donkey Kong. And this is due to happen next year in 2024. And on top of that, you look at all this cross-promotion Nintendo is doing with the Mario Bros. Movie, with these different Mario games that have been announced. We have the Luigi's Dark Moon remaster. We have the Untitled Peach game. We have the Super Mario RPG this November. Super Mario Bros. Wonder this October. There's talk of the 3D Mario launching late next year for Switch 2. So all that, you know, I think it goes to show Nintendo wants to really take advantage of that Mario movie popularity to push different Mario universe characters. That includes Donkey Kong, and the expansion to the park coming next year. I think there has to be a game, like a core new game, for the Donkey Kong Park to be relevant, because it just feels weird for the Donkey Kong expansion to be happening with no recent new game at all. Like, it's just odd for them to do that. I understand Donkey Kong has such a large history, but that kind of goes back to the initial rumor of this Donkey Kong project, that Nintendo wants to bring Donkey Kong back to its roots and celebrate its history, and they want it to be something that's super relevant. And if they're going to have this Donkey Kong expansion, that should definitely be tied into a game in some way, shape, or form. There should be some level of cross promotion there. And if it's one thing if it's like the little Pikmin hidden throughout the park, right? Like, that's like a little subtle thing. But for a main attraction to be Donkey Kong and there to be no new relevant game, that's very odd to me. So in my opinion, either they are going to delay the Donkey Kong expansion until the Donkey Kong game is ready, or the Donkey Kong game is at least going to get announced sometime next year. But I think it could even be coming out sometime next year. So I do kind of see your point about it coming out in the first half of 2024. And I think it could be a great fit as a Switch game. We want it as a Switch game because we want Donkey Kong to reach a lot of sales. So I could see it getting announced in the September Direct if it's going to be coming out in the first half of the year. But there's something important to consider here. There isn't any hard rumors or reports or insiders suggesting Donkey Kong's coming out anytime soon. We're not getting little leaks or details about this game, but we are about Prime 4. There is a rumor it's supposed to come out by the end of the fiscal year, and if it's not, I assume it's relatively close, right? And we're hearing this thing from Andy Robinson, we're hearing this thing from Nick Baker. That seems to suggest that Prime 4 is, around the corner. We're not hearing that about Donkey Kong. That doesn't mean Donkey Kong can't happen, right? I think there are some key differences to consider here. Metroid Prime 4 is being developed by Retro Studios. Retro Studios is in Texas. It's a Western developer. So a lot of Western development studios and people, insiders, they're more likely to get info on that. Donkey Kong, the story is that it's being developed internally at Nintendo EPD. That's in Japan, Tokyo, I believe. I think it was at Kyoto. I have to double. I think it might be Kyoto. I have to double. I don't remember the city because I'm confused on that. I have to double check. Point is, it's in Japan. That most things in Japan are very, it's very tight. That kind of information barely gets out. So that is something else to consider. But why not both? Why can't we get both next year? Like, it would be amazing, right? If the Switch 2 is coming out next year, Nintendo maybe wants to have a strong lineup of games coming out, you know? So maybe. I got a super chat here from, who's this guy? I don't even think I recognize this person. Nintendo Prime. This Nintendo Prime character saying Metroid Prime 4 2024, in his honest opinion, is a lock. Of course I know who Nintendo Prime is. I just talked about him earlier, right? Thank you, buddy, for the super chat. You think Prime 4 2024 is a lock? It kind of feels like it's very likely 2024, right? It kind of feels that way with everything that's been talked about recently. And if Prime 2 does come out this September Direct, as some rumors are suggesting, Jeff Grubb specifically, then that does show Nintendo has a little bit of a trajectory, right? Because Prime 1 came in February. If Prime 2 comes out in September, then that would suggest that Prime 4 could be coming out. We would assume Prime 3 is going to come out before Prime 4, right? So maybe Prime 3 comes out in a February Direct or a summer Direct, and that could position Prime 4, assuming they each have a similar interval of time between each other. I would say the latest early 2025. The latest. So I'm kind of basically I'm thinking of it like this. So latest, right? So Prime 2 comes out February Direct, right? They skip the summer Direct. September, if the rumor's true, we get Prime 2. They follow a similar pattern. They skip the next Direct, then the summer Direct next year, Prime 3. Then they skip the September Direct, and they come. Well, if it's a little different because Prime 4 is not going to be shadow dropped, right? So we would assume that Prime 4 wouldn't be. You know what I mean? Like they probably would have to start talking about it by that point. So I think latest we see it is the first half of 2025, but 2024 there's a really, really good chance that's happening. And I think it would ultimately come down to the kind of lineup Nintendo has set for their new system and the kind of games they want to sort of organize between now and then. And just to clarify for those that may be concerned, I'm not trying to suggest that Prime 4 would not come to Switch. I think it would be available for both systems. So just something I'm going to put out there. Yeah. So let's see here. Fecal Shake, congrats on the 30K. It would be great for dual major release for the next system, Mario Metroid Prime 4. So I've seen this idea thrown around, the idea that it could come out at the same time. I personally don't want them to come out at the same time. I don't want them to be day one releases, because when I get 3D Mario, I am just going to play 3D Mario. When I get Metroid Prime 4, I am just going to play Metroid Prime 4. And I think the hardcore Nintendo fan base, there's going to be some overlap there. And 3D Mario would overshadow Metroid Prime 4 probably. Almost certainly. Just because of how much more popular Mario is. So I want there to be a little bit of a gap between them. It doesn't have to be a significant gap. 1 to 2 months, you know? Like, that's it. If maybe, I mean, I've thrown this idea out before, right? But let's say Switch 2 comes out second half next year, as both Eurogamer and Video Games Chronicle are reporting. They could come out, let's say Switch 2 comes out September, launches with 3D Mario. Then October, release Metroid Prime 4. And Metroid Prime 4 has an amazing, very large, open, segmented, but still Metroidvania style gameplay campaign. It's a masterpiece. But they also, because they spent so much time on it, so much money on it, and brought in so much talent, a lot of talent that's worked on a lot of shooters that have a lot of online multiplayer modes, they incorporate an online multiplayer mode as well. Why? One, having a title like that available early on for Switch 2 to really take advantage of the online multiplayer framework, that's important. But also that gives Prime 4 legs. It keeps people interested in the system and the game for years to come. But I want that with the assumption that the campaign is going to be a masterpiece. Just so we're aware, right? Because I know some Metroid fans don't want there to be multiplayer. I only want multiplayer with the assumption that the campaign took the priority and they just had extra time and resources to bring in a multiplayer on top of that, right? It doesn't impact the single player in any way, shape, or form. But I think it would make sense to kind of do something like that, right? So 3D Mario in September, big, amazing, epic 3D Mario game, something that could not be done on Switch. It probably would be exclusive. That's what I think. But Metroid Prime 4 will be available for both Switch and Switch 2. Comes out October, has a multiplayer. Then November, we get a Pokemon game because we pretty much always get a Pokemon game in November, unless it's a DLC year. It'll be a big Pokemon game. I've been speculating it'll be a Legends game, so that'd be really nice. And then December, I don't know, maybe we skip December, but like that though, that a September to October period, that's a really strong sort of set of games there. I guess the one problem with that theory is that it might be kind of weird to come out in September with 3D Mario, have Prime 4, which is available for both Switch and Switch 2, and the Pokemon game, which will be available for Switch and just through backwards compatibility will run on Switch 2. Like, then there would only be like one exclusive Nintendo game in the in like that first holiday season. Maybe Nintendo squeezes in like one more exclusive game. I don't know what that would be. I'm not sure. It could be Donkey Kong, but I feel like Donkey Kong, like I just think we need maybe like a little bit more variety in terms of like, like maybe like a Mario Party, for example. But it's hard for me to believe that Mario Party would be a part of like that first line. I would love to say Mario Kart November, like that would be amazing. But that just feels too soon. I feel like that would be a 2025 thing. But anyways, you get my point though. I think they could easily have a really strong lineup if the Switch 2 comes out like it's sometime between the July to October period going to the holidays. They could do something really strong there. And I think Prime 4 and 3D Mario will be close. This is interesting because I'm looking at two different chats here. Super Chris, thank you for that. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Let's see. Jean-Carl, Nintendo likes to sit on games, release them at the appropriate time. 100%. 100% they do. That is absolutely true. Joyce J. First, you have to convince me Metroid Prime 4 isn't just an urban legend brought on by the butterfly effect. Okay. Trying to think how do I convince you that it's not an urban legend? I don't know how to convince you that it's not just an urban legend. I mean, if you don't believe any of the rumors, if you don't believe Andy Robinson, the owner of Video Games Chronicle, if you don't believe Nate the Hate, if you don't believe Nick Baker from the Xbox era, if you don't believe these insiders, that's okay. You don't have to believe them. Do you want to believe me? I'm just saying that, like, I've heard that it's nearly done, right? So, but you don't have to believe. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. It's not that I would lie, right? But maybe the person that I'm choosing to believe that told me that shouldn't be believed, right? So, that there's that to consider. But how about the fact that Nintendo hasn't canceled the game? Like, it's still in Nintendo's financial reports, right? Like, Nintendo, you would have to at this point you have to be distrusting Nintendo because the game has been in development for years and Nintendo refuses to take it off their financial reports. They refuse to do so. So, you consider that, like, It's gonna eventually come. I'll say that I think that once Prime 2 comes out, I think at that point, anyone who has any doubt in Prime 4 should it should be dispelled, because why would they bother to release Prime 1 then 2 with no plan of 4 down like that? It's Prime 4 is happening, okay? We just got to be patient. It's totally happening. And once we see it, that's going to change the conversation totally. Like, once people see Prime 4, yes, the people who are kind of like have chosen to not really be excited about it until they see something, that it's gonna become a lot more of a prevalent talking point for sure. What's this? What is this? This is not the chat I was alluding to, but I'll mention this one anyway. Super Chris, if Metroid Prime 4 is open world, do you think it'll be in the same vein as Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom? No, I do not think it'll be in the same vein. In terms of, it's not going to be. It's not open world. And I think maybe. I think that there's a lot of, like, I mentioned this earlier, but I think a lot of people are jumping the conclusion that it's open world because the phrase it's used is big and open. Open doesn't mean open world, and I think it's an important distinction. So when we say open, basically we just mean like a vast expanse that you can move around in. That's what open means. Vast expanse that you can freely move around in. That's open. Okay? Open world, and it is a little confusing. I'm not trying to pretend like there isn't like a definitely like a little bit of a blurred line situation here. But open world implies that you have a environment that is very large. So large that, I mean, it's basically like the entire game fits within this single environment. Like, the majority of the map is all, there's no loading screen to go from one point to the other side of the entire world map of the game. And that's an important difference, right? Like, if there's no other game that you would play, like, for example, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, you can't go from one point of the map. You can't explore the entire map without a loading screen. Like, without a loading screen, there will be a loading screen or two, a few, like, yeah, like a handful, because it's regions. There's bigger regions, and they're segmented. So I think that's a good test, right? Like, if you can explore the entire world map without going through a loading screen, then you know the difference. Like, one's open world versus not. But also, open world comes with the implication that the progression of the game is done in any order. There isn't like a set order to the progression, versus other games that may have vast areas to explore. You still progress the game in a semi or totally linear fashion. Now, this gets confusing with Metroid, right? Because the idea of Metroidvanias is to not be totally linear. There is a general direction you're supposed to go, but a lot of these Metroidvania games have a certain level of branching paths or sequence breaking where you don't have to do things in an exact order. But also, what happens is how you play the games, depending on how you choose to explore the world, and as you discover and realize things, you will go back to different areas you've explored with beforehand, maybe with a new power-up you have, and then that power-up allows you to progress further. And as you're exploring around, you may go back and forth between areas, not sure where you need to go next. It's kind of like this constant exploration of going back and forth, trying to figure it out. It's like a puzzle you're trying to unravel. That's kind of like a Metroidvania is. So what Prime 4 becomes, that's tough. Like, we're not sure how they're going to evolve the Metroid Prime series, right? Because even going with large, open, segmented areas, that's still going to be a tremendous gameplay change to the Prime series. I do think there has to be some semblance of linearity in Prime 4 to maintain that Metroidvania quality of certain progression points being locked behind a power up. So you have to explore the world, find the power up, and then that power up allows you to progress. They may incorporate more branching paths. They may incorporate more sequence breaking. So there's still a lot of non-linear moments, but there is still kind of like an intended direction you're supposed to go. So my basic point is I don't think Prime 4 is going to feel like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom exactly. Now, how do they fill these large open areas though? That's a whole other question, right? Like, how big are these areas? And I presented this concept in my video yesterday about this rumor. If these areas are expansive, vast, open, not open world, but open, right? Then how do you progress? Do you just trot along the same pace? Or do they speed up Samus's movement? Do we use the speed booster, which is like jetpacks behind you, allow you to like dash at a blitzing speed, like a race car from one point to another? Do you use a screw attack, which is kind of you and this ball with electrical energy bouncing up and down with pretty good movement in the air, basically flying? Do we use a boost ball where you race around a morph ball? These things can speed up movement somewhat. But depending on how vast the expanses are, maybe we'll use our gunship to fly around somewhat, potentially. Maybe we'll use our grapple hook a little bit more, where you're lassoing across from one point to another in the air. All these things can be incorporated. I even presented an idea that we haven't seen in a Metroid game before, but I think it would be a really interesting direction. And that's to use mounts, be it vehicles or animals. And mounts, just like, another vehicle, right? Like a motorcycle, a tank, something like that. Like, that's a possibility. I don't necessarily want that, but, it's a possibility. But I like the idea of Samus using animal life. And in this part, maybe it does feel somewhat like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom to an extent. Because imagine this, right? In the Metroid series, specifically the Prime games, you go around the environment scanning. Like, there's natural environments and then there's technological environments, right? There's both. But you scan around, and in the natural environments, you're scanning fauna and just it's getting a better understanding of the biology of the world and the organisms. It's very, observational. There's definitely a certain level of studiousness to it, right? You are kind of, in a way, it's kind of like you could treat the Metroid Prime series almost like you're a scientist going on expeditions studying alien life. Like, there is some semblance of that with the scan visor and exploring these alien exotic environments, right? So if there are some of these vast expanses of these alien worlds that are very exotic and lush with life, then that's an opportunity for Nintendo to do something we haven't quite seen in a while. Like Breath of the Wild's amazing, Tears of the Kingdom's amazing, in part because there's this nature around you get to explore. But that's a nature that is very down to earth for the most part, right? But Metroid is not sci-fi. So imagine being able to explore with detail these alien worlds. And I'm talking about like the more natural, exotic parts of them. And I use this to kind of bring back to the point of mounts. What if there's alien life we can ride or use in some way, team up with in some way? Which may seem like something out of the ordinary for a Metroid game, but keep in mind, the Prime 4 may want to evolve the series somewhat, but there is actually some semblance of precedence here, because in Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion, there are animals that you interact with. In Super Metroid, you save them, and they appreciate you and your existence, right? Like, they are aware that you saved them. They're thankful for this. So there's some level of interactivity there. Imagine this in something like a modern day or next gen, open, not open world, but open, vast Metroid Prime game, and you can interact with them in some way. I think there's something cool that could be done there. So, I think there's some opportunity to kind of really evolve how we move about in the Metroid world with everything else I mentioned, plus the alien life stuff. Those are different possibilities, So in some ways, maybe Nintendo does look at Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and like, hey, there are some things we can maybe incorporate that make exploring the world a bit more fun, potentially. But we also should not lose sight of the fact that Metroid games, there's a lot of corridor gameplay. That's got to be important. It's not just about vast expanses. There's got to be corridor gameplay. Kind of something that's about the Metroid games is kind of like you explore an alien world, but you find yourself deeper and deeper. You're kind of trying to get to the heart of the problem. There's supposed to be an atmosphere to it, a little bit of an intimidation factor, an isolation, and so having claustrophobic moments where you're not just in vast expanses but small closed areas, that's important too. So figuring out how they balance those things, I mean, that's a tall task, and maybe that's part of why it's taken so long for Retro Studios to kind of create this game. But I think that's important to keep in mind. So I think there's going to be substantial differences between whatever openness we see in Prime 4 versus other games like Zelda. But there still could be a lot of those really cool moments where we were kind of in awe just looking off into the distance. Hopefully that somewhat answers the question. Let's see here. Oh, that's a good idea. AB James, Samus's gunship can transform into some crazy land vehicle. Imagine. That would be epic. Like, if Samus's gunship is just like something that can morph into different things based off the environment. Like, if it's almost like a companion to you, that's interesting. And it could be something that maybe updates over time too. Like, maybe you don't have access to all the features at first, but this is kind of thinking on just sort of expanding upon the concepts from Metroid Prime 3. So Metroid Prime 3 had this new visor called the Command Visor. And it was basically the Command Visor was used to issue commands remotely to your gunship. So even though your gunship is far away, there are certain locations that you could have your gunship come in, and it could launch like a platform to hook on, or it could just literally bombard with missiles. So if you expand on an idea, maybe the gunship can still do that. Maybe it can offer like a portable grapple hook to give you access to jump from one area to another. Maybe it can still bombard certain areas with missiles, but also maybe it can come in and it can transform itself into a motorbike. Like, that would be cool. That would be really cool. I love the idea, it'll be fun. I'm all for it. Aaron Ratz likes Star Fox is a good example, because we have the R wings could transform into the walkers in Star Fox Zero, right? There's something to that. There's a similarity there, for sure. Moving on with the chat here. Let's see here. BRX Orthotic. Hopefully, even if they release it late 2024, they have a good market lead up. Yes. So this is important, I think, to talk about, because you look at Metroid Dread. Metroid Dread came out it came out holiday 2021, October 2021, but it was announced at E3 2021. And I've mentioned this before. I used to talk about it a lot. When Nintendo showed off Metroid Dread, not only did they have a very hype announcement trailer for it, but they also had a developer diary. There was a separate video that they put out where Sakamoto, the creator of Metroid, talked about Metroid for like 7 minutes. It was like a separate thing on top of the announcement trailer. But then there was Nintendo Treehouse. And unlike other games, yes, Metroid Dread was in the Treehouse. It had its own segment. But unlike other games, it had 2 segments. That's a lot of extra attention Metroid was given as opposed to anything else at E3 2021. And there was commercials. There were there's the Metroid Dread reports. There's like 7 or 8 of them leading up to release between that June reveal and the October release. And Metroid Dread launched alongside the Nintendo Switch OLED, which also helped to market the game as well, because Metroid Dread is the first game they show alongside the new system. And this is a bit of a joke, but it does still fit. The way the Emmy, which is one of the enemies in Metroid Dread, looks It does the way the OLED looks with the white Joy-Cons on the screen, like it feels like it's a special edition for Metroid Dread. It technically isn't. It fits really well. So they did all these different things. They really advertised Metroid Dread, and what happened? Metroid Dread went on to become the best-selling Metroid game of all time, 3+ million. And 3+ million is a solid number. When you compare it to Mario or Zelda or Animal Crossing, yeah, it's like, okay, that's a complete failure. But when you compare Metroid to Fire Emblem, Xenoblade, it's actually really good. 3 million is really good. And let's also point out Metroid Dread is a 2D Metroid game. It's not a massive, big and open Metroid Prime 4 game. It's a 2D game. These kinds of games Metroidvanias like this, like the side-scrolling games, don't tend to do this well. Obviously, there are some exceptions to a Mario, for example, but that's not a Metroidvania, first off. But, for Metroid Dread to hit those numbers, that's impressive. And a lot of that has to do with Nintendo's marketing. Meanwhile, look at Metroid Prime Remastered. Metroid Prime Remastered is $40. It's at a discounted price. It's something that a lot of Switch players have not played ever before in their lives. It is arguably the best looking Switch game. It's incredible. It uses physical-based lighting. It's still at 60 frames per second. It has completely redone assets altogether. The visuals in Prime 4 just are beyond anything else. Metroid Prime Remastered is one of the highest reviewed games of the year. And I think it's currently the second highest rated game on Nintendo Switch, according to Metacritic, this year outside of Tears of the Kingdom. There might be another game that's beyond it, but its points is very, very high. It's a historically high rated game, even now. And yet, despite this high critical acclaim, despite it being $40, despite it showing, from a visual perspective, a level of ambition and quality that you don't really see anywhere else on Switch, barely, it sold barely over 1 million copies, and there isn't really any strong signs suggesting it's having strong legs to go beyond 1 million. We don't even know if it's going to hit 2 million. So, when we talk about the marketing for Prime 4, this matters. His Metroid Prime Remastered was not marketed. It was supposedly coming out holiday 2021, 2022. Yeah, holiday 2022. We're in 2023. It was supposed to come out the holiday. Didn't happen. And Nintendo randomly announces it in the February Direct. Comes out the same day, same week as Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. There was no build-up. And the announcement during the Direct, it wasn't like a specific segment. It was during like a series of small, quick announcements. So it didn't have a dedicated segment. There was no lead-up. It was just dropped. So it's just very odd that Nintendo would do this to this kind of game. I don't really understand why. I mean, I've had theories, right? I have one theory is just that, Prime 4, they got word that it was nearly done, so we're like, oh, we should probably just push out Prime Remastered, right? Maybe they just couldn't find a good time to release it. Yet here we are with this lull, this August-September period where they could have released it. Of course, maybe the idea is to get Prime 2 out in September. So maybe it's just one of those things where they had this plan to have Prime 1, then 2, then 3 come out in succession with a few months worth of gaps before Prime 4. And they just realized that Prime 4 is coming sooner than they expected. So they had to kind of just shove it out there. Maybe. But the point is that difference in marketing, I think, tremendously hurt Prime Remastered sales. Now, I think something should be noted. While Prime Remastered is incredibly high quality, I cannot stop recommending it. It's an amazing looking game, one of the best looking games on Switch. It's an incredible demonstration of the technology that Retro Studios is actually capable of, and it's super high reviewed, and it's $40. The fact that it's a remastered game, I do think that alone does kind of hamper the sales a little bit. And I would have to kind of collect like a long list of data to really say with 100% certainty. So this is, it's totally just my perspective. It's hearsay based off how I believe things have gone. But of course, my point is that there's a lot of room for me being wrong here, but my perspective is that a lot of remasters, in comparison to a new game, they just don't perform as well. That just does not happen. People in general will buy a new game as opposed to a remaster. You don't really see remasters breaking all levels of sales records. Um, it's a little different. So that could be part of the reason why Prime Remasters only sold a little over 1 million. I look at the Switch audience, though, which, the last I checked, Switch has sold like 129 million systems or something, like about to hit 130. Most of that are core gamers. And yet on the Nintendo GameCube, which was only about 21 million systems sold, the original Prime release sold 2.5 million. Prime Remastered, there's a huge difference in install base here. I think Prime Remastered should definitely sell more than 1 million copies. It's just insane to me that, I think it deserves a lot more. But Nintendo didn't market it. So Nintendo needs to market Prime 4. They need to market Prime 4. And I do wonder if there's some part of themselves that thinks that Prime 4 is not even worth marketing. But you hear about it being big and open. It's been developed for this long. We consider how they announced a development delay. I would like to think Nintendo does care about the Metroid series. The way they treat Metroid Dread leads me to believe that they do. So I think Prime Remastered, I hope it's just kind of like an anomaly exception. And with Prime 4, they have a big, big plan for it. And it's meant to be a big deal. If we think of Prime Remastered as just like a piece to the puzzle of the market lead up to Prime 4, it's a little bit easier to swallow. That, they're putting up Prime Remastered, Prime 2 this September. If that's all meant to kind of slowly hype things up, then, I think that that could go well for Prime 4. But we'll see. I think probably Nintendo does care about Prime 4. It's hard for me to believe otherwise. It's just the way they treated Prime Remastered, though, is, I think, a little shameful. So, Johnny Hernandez, what if Nintendo shows Metroid Prime 4 running on the new hardware at Gamescom? I will flip. Okay, so a little bit of a personal story. It's nothing crazy. I don't know how to do a backflip. I've never done a backflip in my life. Maybe a lot of people haven't done a backflip before, but I can't even do a backflip if I'm at a pool. Why? I don't know. I think there's just something innate. There's an innate, like, fear in me that's like, I'm not going to twist my head this much while going backwards at the slight chance my head hits the concrete of the pool. I'm very careful about my body. When I play sports, I love to play sports. I'll play basketball, I'll play tennis. I've played sports all my life. There have been gaps in time where I haven't because of circumstances, but I love to play sports. But I've never had a serious injury. Never. I don't make moves that will cause substantial injury. I just don't. The worst injury I've ever gotten are sprains. And the reason I get sprains, just messed up ankles, I guess, but it's because someone attacks me while I'm in the air. Like if I'm playing basketball and I go up in the air and I choose to play with the wrong people who are kind of stupid. Like one time I got a serious ankle injury because I was playing basketball and it was people I didn't know. And I'm not trying to show off here. Lately, when I played basketball, I've been kind of bad. But the few years back when I was playing basketball more consistently against these people that maybe weren't even that good, I was destroying them, right? Like I had a team, but like I was just kind of like just wrecking havoc upon them. They had no hope of winning. And I was about to score a last point. I was in the air and they both there's two of them that tackled me. They both just tackled. It was a football tackle, both of them sandwiched me in the air. And that kind of like intertwinement, they caught my ankle and my ankle, like, it was supposed to be straight. It was like that and get to the floor. Like I didn't break my ankle, but I sprained it and I needed to be carried out. I still went for the last shot and missed, but whatever. But yeah, I had to be carried out. It was a really, really bad injury. But point is, random story aside, I will, even though like I'm kind of hardwired to like not do a backflip because of the potential risk, I will do a backflip if they show Metroid Prime 4. with new hardware at Gamescom at the end of this month. I will do a backflip. In water, though, because I don't want to break my head. So, yeah, I'll do a backflip. It's crazy. By the way, I don't think they're going to show off Metroid Prime 4 on new hardware at Gamescom. I really doubt that. I think that's just way too soon. If Prime 4, like, what precedent is that for that? Like, if Nintendo's going to come out with new hardware in the second half of 2024, I don't see them really showing it off in any meaningful way like that publicly. Maybe behind closed doors, but publicly, I just really doubt that. I really doubt that. But we'll see. Giancarlo, if there's a Legend of Zelda Metroid movie one day, will Nintendo have a huge blowout for these franchises like they're doing with Mario to take the hype for the movie? I think there will be at least a game coming out relatively close to both. Yeah, there'll be a game. I mean, the way Nintendo is handling even Metroid right now, we're getting consistent Metroid releases, it looks like. Metroid Dread came out in 2021. There was a free DLC update for that in the first half of 2022. The Prime Remaster came out at the beginning of 2022. Prime 2 may be coming out in September as a shadow drop. Prime 4 may be coming out in 2024. I assume Prime 3 was squeezed in there at some point. There's a lot of talk that Mercury Steam is working on the next Metroid follow-up. We're talking about 2D Metroid, right? Not Prime. So that would be the sequel to Metroid Dread, Metroid 6. That would come out presumably maybe even 2025. Or 2026, right? And if Prime 4 gets DLC of some kind, like that's consistent Metroid content, that's a lot there, you know. And what comes out after that, I don't know. That's a ways off from now. But there could be something else Metroid not too far off is the main point here. But even with something as small as Metroid, like we're seeing relatively consistent content. So if they maintain the relatively consistent content, then if there's a Metroid movie announced, it'll probably, you know, if it comes out within a year, that's probably just pretty likely, you know, if they're just being consistent with Metroid. Same thing for Zelda. You know, in general, we usually have something Zelda every year. The exception was last year. We didn't have it, but that's because Tears of the Kingdom was such a big deal. You know, they saved that for then. And we know Nintendo's sitting on Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, or we strongly believe that they are. So, you know, in general, Nintendo has both of those things kind of just coming out consistently. So if there are movies, there will be a game, at least a game coming out relatively close. So we need a new Donkey Kong game, sandbox type Odyssey game for Donkey Kong. I want something new. I don't know what that is, but I want something new. If it's that, I'm all in. I'm hoping for some kind of 3D-esque Donkey Kong game. Maybe like full 3D, maybe like a fusion of some kind. Maybe isometric. Maybe think kind of like Forgotten Land or 3D World. That would be cool. John Call, Emily Rogers and Nate Drake have never heard of this rumored 2D, 3D Donkey Kong game. I don't think that's true. And if they didn't, that doesn't mean it's not true. So I don't care. I'm not sure. I don't know which EPT group. But, God, Johnny Hernandez with a rumor here. Rumor. Here we go. Johnny Hernandez, rumor. Nintendo Direct scheduled for August 28th, 2023. According to GamesBeat, Jeff Grubb, Nintendo has something in the works for this coming week. What? Well, what? Well, this coming week that, what? I hope not, because I'm on vacation then. Where are you hearing this? Please tell me this is not true. I will not be able to cover whatever this crazy nonsense is. Oh, gosh. No way. No way. I really hope that's not true. Of all the weeks, the one week that I'm not available. Let me see this. I have to Google this. Jeff Grubb, Nintendo Direct. Please be trolling me. Or I just hope it's wrong. No offense. I know there's a lot of talk about Nintendo Direct happening in September, which is how it usually happens. Maybe that's what Nintendo wants to do. They want to pull their leg. I don't believe this. I don't believe this. I can't see any reports on it. But if there's something in the chat that I'm missing, I will. There's something in the chat that you guys like. If you guys want, I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. That's way too soon. Why is it too soon? So the June Nintendo Direct happened a few weeks later than they usually do it. So this is a scenario we're talking about a June Nintendo Direct happening later than usual, and now we're talking about the September Direct not happening in September, and it happens like 2 to 3 weeks earlier. We're shaving off like a month to a month and a half of time between directs here. I have strong doubt about this. Now, I will acknowledge there are a lot of events happening around this time, including Gamescom, I believe. So if there's supposed to be some sort of big showcase of, I dare I say, new hardware, conceivably with 3D Mario Metroid Prime 4, maybe they're having a special event and they're doing it in August to ruin my week. Then, I have strong doubt. I need more proof of this. I need to see. I just doubt this so much. But also, we rarely have a solid day like this leaked this ahead of time. I don't believe this. I need more. Yeah, Johnny, if you could send me something, or if someone in the chat could say something to this, if there's any. I haven't heard this at all. I just don't believe it. Yeah, I'm looking at the chat. Have any of you guys noticed this? I don't believe it. It's got to be a joke. So if something else is, I'm not going to entertain it any longer because I don't want to get people excited about something that may not be happening at all with like no semblance of credibility. I mean, there may be. I just haven't seen it. So until there is, I'm going to just presume that's fake. If it's on a podcast, let me know. Let's see. Nicholas Labruna. Andres, would you rather Metroid Prime 4 announce sooner, but the remakes for the other Metroid Prime 4 games don't exist? Or Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3 exist and come out first? Once upon a time, Nicholas, I would have picked Prime 4 to get announced sooner, and the remakes don't exist. But at this stage, given that what's happening, I think I would prefer to get Prime 2 and 3 first, and then we get Prime 4. Which, by the way, is what I believe is happening. We already got Prime 1. Prime 2 is supposedly coming soon. I believe Prime 2, hint, hint, if I have a Nintendo Direct predictions video, which I am planning to have come out in the week I'm gone, I'm going to make it beforehand. It's going to come out then. Probably the end of August, beginning of September, before Direct actually happens. Part of my predictions is going to include Metroid Prime 2 Echoes Remastered. I believe that's what's happening. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with Prime 4 coming out sometime 2024. It doesn't even have to be immediately. Like, as much as I want to get my hands on Prime 4 and play it, I'm all about the journey for this, right? Like, especially as a content creator, it's like more fun. Because I get to analyze every little bit of footage that comes out. I get to theorize and speculate. Like, the lead up to Tears of the Kingdom was so fun for me. I enjoyed making theory videos like every day for Tears of the Kingdom. I loved that. I loved analyzing every little bit about it. And I can't wait to do that for Prime 4. So I'm all about the journey here. I don't need another rush out with Prime 4. Granted, I say rush out. Like, I'm okay with Prime 4 coming out in the second half of 2024 is what I mean. Like, I'm okay with that. That's, maybe a year-ish from now, right? I don't want to wait a really long time, but, that's fine. And if Prime 2 and 3 come between now and then, that's fine. I would prefer that at this stage. Moving on here. Giancarlo, 3D Mario will be in November, Metroid Prime 4 in December. Strong doubt because Pokemon's going to be in November unless it comes out sooner. Also, I don't like games coming out in December. I think that that limits their sales potential a little bit. So I rather that not happen. I want Prime 4 to have as much opportunity as possible to succeed. Aaron Rass, I think Metroid Prime 4's campaign is going to be huge. Nintendo's going to try and sell it long awaiting game. I do hope they have a huge, large, epic campaign for this. I want Nintendo to do everything in their power to tell the world, hey, Metroid Prime 4 is a big freaking deal, and you should definitely give it a try. I want people to be to actually receive that message. I believe that's what Prime 4 is going to be. I think it's going to be amazing, but well, I thought Prime Remastered was amazing, and it sold just a little over 1 million copies. But it was not marketed. And Prime 4 will be a very, very, very different beast. So, Nintendo, market this game. I think they're going to. I think Prime 4 is going to be treated like a big deal. They treated Metroid Dread like a big deal. Prime 4 should be treated like an even bigger deal. So, I'm prepared for that. Super Chris, what features do you think the alleged Switch 2 will have? Oh, good question. Let me drink a little bit of water here. Let's see. So, what features do I think it'll have? I think the alleged Switch 2 will have magic. It will have a lot of magic. Beyond magic, I think it will have it will have I think it's gonna be a Switch, basically, is what I think. I think it's have more improved visuals. I think it's gonna have backwards compatibility. I think it's I got basic things. I don't have anything crazy to say. One thing I do believe it will have that's gonna make it more enjoyable for me personally. I think the Joy Cons are going to be redesigned. I think the Joy Cons are going to be a lot more comfortable to use and hold long term. Because holding I have the original Switch model. And I've been holding it comfortably, and I try to hold it comfortably, and I won't play it for long stints, but like my hands go numb because the way it's shaped, it's just not ergonomic. I want more ergonomic Joy Cons. I want better grips on those. That's a big change I want. It may not seem like a big deal, but for long-term handheld play, I think it's a huge deal. So that's one feature I would like to see. I do believe that there is going to be a large screen on this thing. I like the idea of that 8-inch LCD. I think it's going to be a 1080p screen. I think that's going to make a big difference. It's going to really help the Switch to kind of master like the tabletop mode, that kind of screen with the horizontal kickstand that the OLED implemented. I think that's gonna go over really well. And the Joy Cons are redesigned, have more ergonomic handles. Maybe they're a little bit more robust and a little bit more comfortable to use in co-op mode, where you use each Joy Con individually as separate controllers. That I think that could really make tabletop mode a big deal. I think that could make it something that's a little bit more worthwhile to people. Because I've done it and I appreciate it, but it feels almost like a novelty. A bigger screen, better Joy Cons. I think that will make a bigger difference to kind of legitimize tabletop mode. Beyond that, I could throw out the VR idea, but I think that's something unlikely to come out at launch, right? So we'll see. We'll see on that one. Beyond that, I think the HD Rumble is going to be improved. So I'm trying to think of like a unique feature, right? Because I feel like I'm saying a lot of things that are kind of obvious, right? I do believe the Switch 2 will have some frame of AI upscaling, something like that. There will be, that's just going to facilitate better visuals with less raw output. It's going to reduce power consumption, all these different things. It's going to make it better to have better visuals. It's just going to make things more efficient. That's basically what it's ultimately going to do. It's going to make a difference. It's going to make games look and run really well with minimal power consumption. So that's going to be fantastic. But beyond that, I mean, I don't really think it needs to have a crazy gimmick. So I think Nintendo just needs to follow up the Switch really well. If they have a cool gimmick, I'm willing to give it a try, but I can't think of anything crazy. And part of that's because I don't want anything crazy and wonky that doesn't make any sense. I want something meaningful. Part of the problem I have with Nintendo's past of doing a lot of these weird things, it just kind of feels like they sort of market it as a big revolutionary change that will evolve gaming, but oftentimes it's not. So whatever it is that they do, I just hope it's something that's a meaningful change that will become a mainstay moving forward. The Switch itself, being able to switch, the hybrid component, that I think should stay. That's a mainstay moving forward. That is a tremendous innovation, be able to be home console and portable at the same time. It offers a lot of flexibility in terms of how you play games. The tabletop mode, that's a big deal, I think. I think that's actually a nice feature that should become a mainstay. What else can they do to evolve the gaming experience? It's not, and I think there's a few different ways this can be done. It's not necessarily with hardware. It can be done through the games themselves. I think maybe creating hardware that has the power to support Nintendo's visions of what they want to do with their games. If these games can then go ahead and innovate, then that's amazing. Like, look at Tears of the Kingdom. The amount of physics and technologies and ideas that are going on in this game are insane. It's innovative. I want more Nintendo games to innovate through their software, and I'd rather the hardware to support that innovation through the software, if that makes sense. So that's what I have to say on it in terms of features outside of the rumored stuff. I mean, they're supposedly going to have more internal storage. Let's do it. If it has more, great. I don't need it, but great. AB James. Mercury Steam working on 2 games. Could there be another 2D Metroid game in the works as well? I think 100% yes. There's another 2D Metroid game in the works. Metroid 6. If I'm not mistaken, there was a rumor that Mercury Steam was working on the next Metroid game, the next 2D Metroid game after Metroid Dread. And I believe this same source has recently said that there are Nintendo Switch 2 dev kits out there in Spain. So that's interesting. There's that coincidence that rumor because those 2 different things, which also leaked Metroid Dread before it was announced. Not the game, just like, title and that stuff. So if that's all true, and we've recently gotten the reports from Digital Foundry and Eurogamer that corroborate this idea that dev kits are out there, it adds more credence to this idea, this rumor of the dev kits. And if this rumor of the dev kits is true in Spain, then that also supports the initial rumor they also had that they're working on Metroid 6 or Metroid Dread 2. Point is, I'm inclined to believe the rumor or not. I think Mercury Steam should be working on Metroid. I mean, it's not a rumor that we know they're working on 2 projects, right? One of them's like a third-party thing. We know that. But yes, they should be working on the next Metroid. I think it's Metroid Dread's their most successful game that they've ever made. They love making Samus Returns. They love making Metroid Dread. They're probably going to make the next Metroid game. They're probably going to become the dedicated 2D Metroid developer, if it's not already very clear. So totally, yeah, Mercury Steam is absolutely working the next Metroid. There's no doubt there. Super Luigi Kong. Do you think Metroid Prime 4 will be cross-gen or stay Switch exclusive? That's a tough call. I don't know exactly how it's going to be marketed, but this is what I believe. I believe that for sure it's going to be playable on original Nintendo Switch. However, I also think that the way Nintendo is going to handle Prime 4, I don't know if that means there will be a upgraded version or a second release or an update for Prime 4. I'm not sure how they're going to handle that, and I'm not sure exactly when they're going to release it. But I do believe that their plan is to make sure Prime 4 is involved with the hype and attention of the next system. And I think the idea is to help. They want Prime 4 to and the system and the new system to cross promote each other to some extent. So I think it'll be tied to the next system, but I still think it'll still be playable on Switch. So that's what I believe. Cody McGuire, God of War is an open game. I think this might be a very smart thing you said here. Because at first I thought your thing was open world. And I haven't played through the recent God of War games totally. I haven't played Ragnarok, and I played like 10 or so hours of the first game. But from what I remember and from what I've heard, the God of War games, they are open games, but they are not open world. They are kind of like large areas that you go from one point to another and slowly explore. And they're expansive, but they're not open world. So like maybe God of War is a good example of how Metroid Prime 4 could be. So that's something to keep in mind. A.B. James, the Galactic Federation as a hub would be cool, and then we can take the gunship from there to some new planet where the bulk of the game takes place, or multiple planets like Corruption. So a hub area. I don't know. In hindsight, while I thought the idea of going from planet to planet was cool in Prime 3, and I actually would have preferred the idea. I mean, I think I have to double check this, but I've heard, and I need to do more research on this, but I've heard that they wanted to, at one point, have more open exploration in space between the planets as opposed to it just being dedicated menus. I would personally not want a hub area in a space station and just to go to some of the planets individually. Like, it could work, but I would want those planets to be very deep. Like, I feel like the planets in Prime 3, there was kind of limited. There wasn't that much you could explore with them in comparison to what we could explore of these single planets in Prime 1 and 2. But if it's the case that there's so much effort being put into Prime 4 that they could have multiple planets, each planet matches the level of depth that we had in Prime 1 and 2, then I'd be open to the idea. And also be open to the idea that maybe, like, if it's within a certain space, a certain solar system, maybe you can fly through space in an open environment and approach these planets. But once you're within the planets, then it's more of a Metroidvania-like environment. That could be cool, too. Aaron Rass, do you think that Retro Nintendo even keep the Metroid Prime 4 theme and not change the name? I think there'll be a subtitle. I think it is officially going to be considered Prime 4. I am a proponent of Nintendo doing away with the number, though. I think the same way when Nintendo said, "Oh, it's The Legend of Zelda." Okay, that's the Legend of Zelda game. There we go, right? Whenever Nintendo says, "Oh, Super Mario," okay, there we go. Whenever Nintendo says, "Oh, well, Metroid Prime," oh, then we know. Oh, so it's a 3D Metroid game. I just want that to be thought. Like, that's kind of my perspective on it. I want Prime 4 to drop the number. That's what I want. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do. That's what I want. But I just want people to understand that Metroid Prime moving forward is this. And I don't want them to think that they have to play prior Prime games to play the current one, because sometimes that can be a barrier of entry for people. That said, people are playing Pikmin 4 and it's just Pikmin 4. So, I could be wrong. Ray Spence. Metro Prime 4 scan device using Pikmin 4 AI name generator. Face blue smiling. I am not sure I understand. I never use a name generator. I'm not familiar with this. But I am all for scan visor shenanigans, I'll tell you that. Disinferno. Samus's ship going to be used as a vehicle for traveling through the planet without loading. You're going to have control over Samus's ship. I hope so. Maybe. I'm okay with that. Johnny Hernandez. Jeff Grubb heard there's a Nintendo Direct happening in August, not September. He said it's not an indie showcase, so he said August 21st will get announced. I need a source on this. I need a source. Give me a source. Please give me a source. If you have a source, I will gladly look this up. I haven't heard that. I feel like people would be going nuts if that was true. Maybe people didn't pick up on it yet. Wilberforce Wooster. I don't know. Metroid Prime 3 allowing you to use the gunship really got rid of the feeling of isolation. Huh. Right. I think there is going to be a balance here, right? Between having large open environments, having access to a space station, like something about Prime 3, like having to talk to a whole bunch of people. Like some people didn't like that sense of it kind of took away from the isolation. But I'll also argue with Prime 3, value that Prime 3 had overall. Because you got to meet people, you got to meet fellow hunters, and you kind of built up a certain level of camaraderie in the beginning. To then see them go through their degradation, being corrupted, and then to lose them made you feel more alone. It's kind of like, forgive me if this is getting too personal. No, it's not personal, like not for me, but like just like real life stuff. It's kind of like if you haven't had a relationship and you're just single, yeah, maybe you feel lonely sometimes, right? But if you enter a relationship and it's a relationship you cared about that you were happy with and it's gone, that feeling of loneliness is worse than when you didn't have any sort of relationship to compare it to, right? So point is that when you lose something, I think you can argue the isolation there can feel even more impactful. So that was actually something that I actually appreciate about Prime 3. I know there are people who argued otherwise on that. With the gunship specifically, it really just depends on how you use it, right? Like if it becomes like I was arguing like maybe as a companion earlier, right? So if you look at it as a buddy, maybe your robot buddy may indeed take away from that isolation. So that is something to consider. And I do want Metroid Prime 4 to have those isolating moments that kind of put a chill down my spine. Like I'll want to feel the pressure. I want to feel the fear in certain parts of the game. Totally. Lord Atiak. The real question is what the title would be. We watched all Phazon in the universe die, so with the lifeblood of Metroid Prime eradicated, the game cannot be sensibly titled Metroid Prime. I'm glad you brought this up, actually. So, two things. Going back to what I was talking about earlier, I think Metroid Prime should just be looked at, hey, the Prime in the game just tells you this is about first person adventure, not open world, Metroid gaming, right? Like that's what I think the Prime naming should suggest. However, I also think that there will be a new Prime Metroid. So, for those that don't know, Metroid Prime is alluding to a really powerful Metroid that's been powered up with face on a special type of radiation. It's had gone through a lot of an evolution and genetic mutation to become the ultimate end boss. Um, I think there can be a new one. I think there's going to be another Metroid. And actually, we know that Sonic is supposed to play a role in Metroid Prime 4. This has been told to us by Kensuke Tanabe, the producer for the Prime series. Silex steals a Metroid egg at the end of Federation Force, and this is meant to be a tease for the future. And we know Silex is also following Samus at the end of Prime 3. So I believe this stolen Metroid from Silex is going to become the next Prime Metroid. So Metroid Prime 4, totally valid, totally going to happen. By the way, Prime 3 was supposed to be the end of the trilogy, right? Like, that was supposed to be it. So there wasn't a follow-up after that. But here we are at Prime 4, right? So just because sometimes there may be a trilogy or something, that doesn't mean there can't be follow-ups afterwards. BRX Orthotic. Oh, I would love some behind the scenes or extra videos for Prime 4. Totally. I love how they had like developer diaries for Tears of the Kingdom. I love how they had developer diaries for Pikmin 4. I love how they had them for Metroid Dread. I want that for Metroid Prime 4. If anything, I wanted more because Metroid Prime 4, its development cycle, the story and history behind this is perhaps more perplexing and curious than any other game throughout the Switch era. So any sort of intel or insight we can get to the process of this, I want to see. Totally. Plus, it could sometimes we get more lore indications and things like that as well. And that can be totally useful. Let's see here. I'm trying to keep up with the chat. I think I'm definitely behind. I think there was a super chat earlier I missed. I want to get to that. Oh, there we go. Samuel talks about games. Thank you, Samuel, for that super chat. Yo, I misguessed that the podcast started at 8, but it did at 7. What have I missed? It started at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Have you missed? I mean, we've just been doing Q&A chat, like, so there's been different stuff. It's been mostly Metroid tonight, which I'm very happy. I'm happy to talk about all night. Also, my last 2 videos are in the 60-75 view range. Wow, that's impressive, dude. Keep it up. Seriously, just keep it up. It will continue to grow. There'll be ups and downs, but just continue to enjoy what you do and be consistent with it. And over time, you'll get better. You'll be able to viewership. Keep it up. All right. Gerardo, hey Andres, how are you? I'm okay. I haven't done like just a Q&A in a while. And the thing about the Q&As is that it's a lot of me talking, right? So my voice is like readjusting. I haven't done this in over a month, if not longer. And actually, so another reason why I want to do the Q&A, because I noticed during the podcasts, and part of this is because I'm trying to improve the quality of the podcasts. But also when there's other people in the podcast, when I have guests, depending on how much they talk, that takes away from time to do Q&A, right? And I like to do Q&A. So I'm not saying that the Q&A is going to disappear from the podcast itself, but what has happened is that the Q&A is definitely more minimal during the podcast, right? I don't have as much opportunity to get to as much people during the podcast. Like it's a handful of comments I get to during the podcast, but here in the Q&A, that's the entire discussion, right? Like I'm trying to get to as many things as possible. So very different. I mean, here we are an hour and a half in. I feel like I'm looking at this bar I have here, and I think I'm only around 25%. Like I'm falling behind. So I'm going to try and speed up here because I want to get to as many people as possible. Ray Spence, if they didn't care about the Metroid franchise, they wouldn't have restarted development on Metroid Prime 4. That is a very good point. Prime Remastered, I think, is just an exception. BRX, I thought I've landed on my head trying to do a backflip before, so you know how dangerous it is. That's why I do not do backflips. But if Prime 4 is at Gamescom with Switch 2, I will do a backflip. I don't think it will be, but I will do a backflip in water because I don't want to die. Let's see here. Prime 4 sounds like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 in essence. You need to backtrack for side quests, etc. Yeah, I've brought up Xenoblade before. I think Xenoblade might be a decent comparison. I mean, it's not... I think maybe the difference is that you don't have to backtrack for side quests in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. You should, but you don't have to. In Metroid Prime 4, you'll be a lot more encouraged to backtrack and kind of maybe become more acquainted with the world you're exploring. And I imagine that while there's going to be some vast areas, there's going to be a lot more cave systems and closed corridor space stations and things like that too that are mixed into these vast areas. That's what I kind of envision. Let's see here. Leo Aguiar, thank you for that super chat. Having a bigger area for Metroid Prime 4 is interesting and exciting, but it's a rumor, but that would be amazing. Wish it would be open world. Well, my question to you is, why do you want it to be open world exactly? I think, but I'll tell you this. I like open world games because I like that sense of freedom of exploration. I love exploration, right? And Metroid games the exploration is a big part of it. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we're hearing about them doing big and open areas, because they want to encourage exploration. They really want to build on the exploration of Metroid. But open world suggests more than just the world you explore, but the progression as well. And straight up, totally open, out of order progression can impact that Metroidvania quality. But I mean, it depends. Well, it depends on how they do it. I think something else to note here is that I think some people are assuming that Metroid Prime 4 is 100% not going to be open world. I'm not predicting it will be, right? I think it's fair to say it probably won't be. But one, it's a rumor. So, of course, take it with a grain of salt. It may not be true. But also, two, Nick didn't say he knew it was an open world. He simply said he thought, right? And it's based on what he was told of the clip. And maybe that person, from what they told, wasn't sure either. We don't know how much they've seen. And maybe they just made the assumption it's not going to open world because it's a Metroid game, and they don't think it should be because that's just kind of, it seems to be kind of contradict. Like open world and Metroidvania are almost contradictory of each other, and that's kind of the tricky part, right? So it may have been just an assumption, but they saw a vast area, so they're like it's kind of comparable. They just said think. They didn't know. There's a difference. That said, I also think it won't be open world. Not exactly, but some people may think it is, because some people think the Xenoblade games are open world, but they're not. They're just really big. All right, let's see where am I at with the chat. Thank you, Paul Gale. Very much. I very much appreciate that, buddies. Thank you for stopping by. Having hope. Hello there. Thank you for the congratulations. I'm very, very, very happy to have gone to this point. Glad you're here. Let's see. Joe 6831. Andres, how many games do you think will be at launch on Switch 2? Well, I assume I actually believe it's gonna be backwards compatible. I could be wrong there, but so basically the entire Switch lineup is gonna be available on that. I think everything's gonna transfer over. That's what I think. I could be wrong, but I think it's gonna launch with one game, and it's gonna be 3D Mario, and then they're just gonna have games coming out consistently afterwards in quick succession. That's what I think. The same way they handled Switch, where it was Breath of the Wild day one, and then some games here. There may be some like eShop games or something day one, but the major titles will be 3D Mario. Then every couple of weeks there'll be more and more games coming out. Hey, it's Joey, Ferris Wheel Pro. How you doing, buddy? We are definitely talking about Metroid Prime 4 rumors today. That is totally happening. Super Luigi Kong. For a while, I was thinking cross-gen with Metroid Prime 4, but after I heard it, it was still labeled as a Switch exclusive. I'm kind of mixed on what will happen. Yeah, it's tough. I'm standing by what I've been saying. I think Prime 4 is coming to Switch, but it will also in some way, shape, or form be tied to Switch 2. I don't know exactly how, but it will be tied to Switch 2. Joey, Ferris Wheel Pro. I also think the new Tomb Raider games are good examples of the big, not open gameplay. I actually saw your video on this, and I haven't played them, but I thought that was a fantastic example. Yeah. Big open areas with lots to do, lush environments. You know, earlier I was talking about how I think Metroid Prime 4 is a good opportunity for Nintendo to kind of really focus on some of the maybe exotic alien life, but like from a more natural standpoint, not just like the technology stuff. And having like these lush, exotic alien environments that we can go through that are dense in a vast area, I think that would be amazing. Having hope. I think it can make sense that Metroid Prime 4 could be cross-gen. I think 3D Mario could be as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that I know for a fact that they're cross-gen. I think 3D Mario is going to be a Switch 2 exclusive. I think Metroid Prime 4 is going to be cross-gen. If anything, like if there's going to be, like I'm not sure about what to say about cross-gen because like maybe it's just an update maybe it comes up for Switch, but there's an update for it or something. But I honestly think 3D Mario is going to be exclusive to Switch 2. And part of that's just because by the time that comes out, I think the Switch will have been out for 7.5 years. And I think that's a very long lifespan. I think Nintendo wants to make sure that people buy Switch 2. And they're going to want exclusives to do that. I don't think they're going to take the exact Sony route. I used to think they were. But as they've taken more time, as they've taken longer to do things, I now no longer think so. That said, while I think 3D Mario is going to be exclusive, I think there's going to be some games that won't be, like Metroid Prime 4, like the next Pokemon game. And I think the Switch 2 is going to be backwards compatible. I've mentioned this before. I think any game you have on Switch, you can play on Switch 2. I think your eShop will transfer over. I think NSO will transfer over. Your entire Nintendo account. So, there's going to be a lot of nice things, but I think they're going to have a few exclusives immediately. And they'll have some cross-gen stuff, but it's not going to be across the board. I mean, heck, even PlayStation wasn't across the board. Their Ratchet and Clank wasn't exclusive. That's probably Sony's closest comp to 3D Mario. Let's see here. Interesting. Okay, Nicholas. It would be cool if in a Metro game there were side missions where Samus got to actually act as a bounty hunter for once. So I'll entertain this idea for a moment where be it one giant world or a solar system with multiple worlds, however they choose to handle this. I'm inclined to just have one big world that we explore, but however they choose to do it, if there is like a if there's a framework set where there is some level of communication to the Federation and they can issue bounties and you can kind of hunt the world for bounties, that would be cool. And what's interesting about this is that maybe if they have some of these larger, vast areas where there are some expanses to travel across, maybe within each kind of region, there are certain, maybe you can call them side quests or bounties to do. Maybe there's maybe it's not even like so much that you have a direct contact with the Federation, but maybe you find a surviving Federation or even dead members that had a mission and you're like, I'm going to finish their mission for them. Like you just take it upon yourself. So you can maybe take on someone else's bounty, for example. Yeah, like that would be interesting. Now, why do you do that? What is the benefit of doing these bounties? Like, do you just do them for altruistic reasons, right? My point is that typically in most games there are side quests. And if there are side quests, then there's supposed to be a reward, right? So if you're accepting bounties, that's a job where you're supposed to get paid. So that would be suggesting that there's going to be a currency system in Metroid Prime. So what do you use a currency for? What are you buying? And if you're buying something, it suggests that there's some level of society where you're at that you can buy things. And this could potentially take away from the isolation. Now, an idea I'm going to throw out where they could maybe do this, and maybe this is a bad idea. It's just kind of a thought that came up. So I'm putting it out there. Maybe it's a bad idea. I'm sorry if it is, but this is the idea. Because I've been arguing that they maybe should have multiplayer, right? Assuming that there is at no expense for the single player, right? That it does not impact the single players negatively in any way. But if there is a bounty system, maybe you do get rewards. There's a currency you receive, and this is totally side quest stuff, right? But it does a currency isn't something that is used in a single player, right? Because it's not needed. But what it's actually for is to unlock things in the multiplayer, and it's a separate thing. Now the problem with this is that maybe this takes a little bit away from kind of like the immersion, right? Because if you do a bounty and then you get a bounty, you have a currency, you can't use it in the campaign. Like, what's the point? That seems a little odd. So maybe there's that. Now maybe another possibility is that as you do bounties, it's not so much a currency, but maybe permissions. I don't like this idea either, but I'm throwing it out there because it's kind of other end worked, like how you needed permissions to do certain things. Or if we think about like Metroid Fusion, there were technologies that the Federation could send you could take advantage of, but you're not granted them until certain points in the game. So in theory, maybe they can kind of make Metroid Prime 4 somewhat RPG-esque, where the more currency you acquire through doing bounties, you can use that to have technology sent over to you for expansions and upgrades to your arsenal and abilities, or you could purchase permissions to do it. I don't love that idea because I feel like that takes away from the isolation of Metroid. Um, I don't know. It depends on how it's kind of all put together. I'm a little. Uh, I'm not against the idea of having bounties. I guess I'm against the idea of. I don't know. It's tough. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I'm trying. I love the idea of having bounties somehow tied to the multiplayer, though. That would be different. So now, to entertain another idea, right? I've suggested before that if there is a Metroid Prime 4 multiplayer, it doesn't have to be exactly like traditional online multiplayer shooter games. It could be maybe something more like Federation Force, where you can team up with other people and go on missions or accept bounties to hunt targets, other hunters, other space pirates, other giant monsters, right? So those are all possibilities. Um, so maybe you could team up with people online and accept bounties, and then you go and do those bounties. And if you do the bounty, you do get a reward. It's in currency, which can be used to upgrade your arsenal for online play for more co-op missions. And then there still is kind of like the traditional multiplayer as well. Like that's something somewhere where it kind of fit. So there's that. Now, another idea that kind of comes to mind, right, is that let's just kind of pretend for a moment. And it could go either way, right? If it's like multiple planets in a solar system where it's like a base of operations, space, like, kind of like a Federation ship somewhere there, or it's just one big planet. But I'm just going to assume it's one big planet for now, just because it's easier for me to kind of process. Say there's one big planet, and there's a reason why you're at this planet, but you're not the only one. The Federation goes there, space pirates go there. There's maybe scientists go there. There are multiple factions that have gone to this planet. There's something very odd about it, right? And there's a whole story here tying with Silex, and there's this race to the core of the planet, right? So getting deeper and deeper. And perhaps on the surface, it's a little bit more public. There's a little bit more people. There are going to still be some isolated areas, but there may be some other areas that aren't so isolated, right? And you can run into maybe Federation members or the messed up Federation members in the space pirate camps, different things. There will be some level of community, but as you delve deeper and deeper into the world, because you're trying to get to the core, because there's something there. You're looking for something, right? There's a target that you're trying to get to, and it's somewhere deep within the planet. So as you get deeper and deeper, that sense of isolation grows, and it kind of becomes more significant, right? If that's the case, you can have this surface where there may be some semblance of community. There are pockets of community, and maybe having bounties or targets or missions could be interesting if it's kind of meant to kind of tie into some sort of balance of the communities and warring factions on the surface. And you're kind of maybe this middle ground or Elias in between it all. I can maybe get behind that kind of concept, but it's just the one challenging part to it is that I fear that it can take away from the isolation of the game. There's that fear, and I still don't know how you handle the currency. Maybe with that currency, depending on where you go, there are certain Federation groups that can offer you certain equipment upgrades. Or maybe it is to just send it to. Maybe you offer to donate it to the Federation Force or whatever, and the multiplayer mode is about playing as a Federation trooper where you can use that currency, as I suggested earlier, but it's done in a way that fits the canon and doesn't take away from the immersion of the game. A lot of options there. If I had to guess, there's no currency in the game. That's my guess. That's just not going to happen. But I don't know. Ray Spence. Ray Spencer's a super chat. Thank you so much, buddy. Sorry, I was cooking for dinner for the family earlier. Well, I'm glad you fed your family. The comment is out of context now. It was way before, so you were behind a bit. Congrats on 30,000. I've been here since 12K and sticking around till 2 million. Thank you, Ray. I now worry that when I hit 2 million, you'll leave. But if I hit 2 million, I imagine I'll be a very, 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 very happy camper. If I hit 2 million, would that make me like the biggest Nintendo YouTuber? Like, who is the biggest Nintendo YouTuber? I know Arlo is pretty big. I mean, Game Explain is a million, right? But Game Explain is a collective. Um, let's see. Game Explain. Game Explain is at a million. 1.4 million. What's Arlo at? Arlo's at 675. Someone else is really popular. I forget his name. He has really long hair. He had the fake Tears of the Kingdom OLED. What's his name? There's a couple. I'm trying to remember. What's his name? I don't think he's bigger than Arlo. I'm not sure. Beat 'em ups. Thank you, Samuel. What's beat 'em ups at? Beat 'em ups is at 1.74 million. He is close to 2 million. So if I had 2 million, I'd be bigger than beat 'em ups. But I imagine that if I ever get to 2 million someday, beat 'em ups would be above 2 million by that point for sure. There is someone else that I'm thinking of that's pretty big. I haven't seen his videos in a while. He doesn't do them too often. I'm trying to remember his name, man. I'm not good with names. He's great. What's his name? He tends to have a blue screen in the background of his videos. Switchforce has a lot of subscribers, but I don't think he's in the millions. Okay, Ray. I'll try and stick to 1.99. Just that way, you'll stick around. Switchforce is cool. But I think I don't know how close he is to a million. I think he has a ways to go. He's at 425. There's someone else. I'm trying to remember their name. They don't necessarily report on rumors. They just kind of make they usually are more retrospective. Scott the Waz. Thank you, Natsu. That's who I was thinking of. I'm terrible with names. Scott the Waz is at 1.84 million. Scott the Waz is currently the biggest YouTuber that I can think of right now. So there's a lot. I love the idea of becoming the biggest YouTuber someday, but I don't need to be. Well, I'm very competitive though, so part of me is always gonna be like, but what if I could? I think my content would have to change. We'll see what happens. That's probably a ways off from now. Although you never know. You never know. All right. Moving on here. Trying to keep up with the chat. I think I'm starting to catch up. Aaron Rath. Name of the new Switch you think and a date for the September Direct. Okay, you're going to hate me for this. Nintendo Switch 2. That's it. That's what I think the name should be. And I do think there's a chance that is the name they stick with. I know people are like, but Nintendo never does that. I know Nintendo never does that. I'm predicting Nintendo is going to go out of the ordinary for their standards. I just think that the marketing would be very simple. It would be very clear cut. And that's it. That people would know what it is. There would be no debate. There will be no risk of a Wii U situation. And it just continues on. I think I mean, Nintendo has made some allusions to this in some of their interviews. They're a little concerned about the transition. And you look at Sony, they just don't. Sony doesn't have to worry about this. This is never a concern for Sony. PS1, PS2, PS3, PS4, PS5, every single one of their systems has performed pretty well. Yes, some have done worse than others, but each one is still at least 70 million, right? There's no such thing as I mean, PS5 is not there yet, but it will get there. They've never had a system that's been a straight up failure. And part of that's because their marketing and branding is consistent. Nintendo should just be consistent. I think Switch 2 is clear cut. You can say, oh, we'll just stick with Switch branding and then give it a little extra name. But once you start going with a little bit of extra name, you run the risk of some people thinking it's just an add-on or a side thing. And so when you're doing revisions, that makes total sense. But when you're doing a next generation successor, a straight up Switch 2 would be such a simple, clear cut way to do it. And you have nothing to worry about in terms of marketing. You've done your marketing already throughout the entire Switch era. Switch 2. So that's what I think. And I could be wrong because Nintendo has never done that before. But I think they're going to do it now. And we shall see. In terms of a date for September Direct, I have two different... I got to double check something here. There's something I got to double check. I want to go to Nintendo Direct Archive. Am I allowed to share with you guys? Hold on. Let me see if I want to double check the dates for the September Nintendo Directs. So let me see if I can. I'm using new streaming software, so I am not sure how this works. Okay, let me see. Okay. All right, let's try this. Let's see if it works. Okay, it works. Neat. And it actually cuts off the top part. Okay, I like how this setup is. I am happy they're doing this. Okay, great. So, we had the last September Nintendo Direct was 9/13/2022. Now, I'm going to check the calendar here. Let's see. So, I'm going to the future. I want to go back to the past. September 2022 was September 13th. September 13th, 2022 was a Tuesday. Is it on a Tuesday? They always really Tuesday. I like kind of doubting myself here. All right, September 23rd, 2021. Let's check that. Let's check that. All right, let's go back to 2021. All right. So September 23rd. Oh, this is 2020. I got to 2021. You dunce. I was looking at it was a Saturday. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Okay. September 23rd. So in 2021, it happened on a Thursday. September 23rd, 2021. Did I maybe miscalculate the... So September 13th, 2022. Yeah, that was a Tuesday. So it's kind of hard to... There's some consistency with the days here. That's interesting. I wonder why. And then go back to October. We had this. Man, Tuesday is Wednesday. You know what? All right. This is what I'm going to guess. I'm giving my prediction now. I'm going to average it. Just going to go to Wednesdays. So September 2023. I'm looking at a calendar here. You guys can't see that part. But September 2023, it's going to be in the either the first full week or the second full week of September. It was something interesting about September 13th that falls on a Wednesday is that that's when the Pokemon DLC is coming out. So, but it's one of those 2 days. I think it's going to be September 6th in the first full week of the month or the second first full week of the month on the 13th. Those are my predictions. It's my prediction. It's not totally specific. It's 2 options, but that's what I believe. And I could totally be wrong, but that's what I think. All right, so how do I go back to non-presenting? Remove. There we go. All right, cool. Figuring out this new software. It's not that bad. I can still share and present things, which is what I like to do. It's actually very clear cut and clean. I can share chats, which I appreciate. Yeah, see, I had it like this, but like this, it kind of fits in the chats better. Okay. Guys in the chat, I didn't hear anyone say anything, but I'm just curious. Can you guys hear background music? I never saw any chat on it. Maybe someone did see it say and I just missed it. But um, if can you guys hear background music? And if so, is it too loud or is it too quiet? Let me know. I'm looking. I would like someone to. You guys cannot hear anything. Cannot hear anything. Okay, I can hear something. It's probably way too quiet. All right, let me try something here. All right, give it a second. Can you guys hear that? Do you hear anything now? Probably take a moment. You can hear it. Is this good? Is this is it too? Is this a good level? Okay. If it's too loud or if it's not loud enough, let me know. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Let me know if I need to balance it at all. I would appreciate it. Thank you guys. All right. Let's continue on with the chat here. Where was I? Super Luigi Kong. Do you think we'll ever get Castlevania Symphony of the Night on Switch or no? I don't think I'm learned enough on the circumstances regarding Castlevania to really give a clear-cut answer on that. I do wonder, because I know this. I know this has been a talking point before. Like, why hasn't Symphony of the Night come? And I don't know why. I don't know. So my honest answer is I don't know why. It's like I'm looking at it now. It's like it's not on any Nintendo platform. That's interesting. Was it originally a PlayStation game? Castlevania Symphony of the Night is an action role-play game developed and published by Konami for the PlayStation and Sega Saturn. Well, that's why it won't be on NSO. I think eventually we'll see something, but it would probably have to come in another collection focused on Symphony of the Night. I don't know. I know there was something about that a couple years ago. There was a collection that it didn't have it for some strange reason. I think a lack of it of a history of it being on Nintendo platforms does kind of hurt its chances. But I also have a hard time believing that it won't eventually come. So, but I just don't. I don't know what the timeline would be. I think at this point it would happen on Switch 2 eventually, which could still include Switch because I think Switch will be supported for a few years. Santa talks about games. What if Prime 4 has open space exploration but linear areas similar to Starfield and even Prime 3 to an extent, but going through space is open world? It might be fun. I wouldn't hate that necessarily. So I'm okay with that. I want open. I love playing Starlink because in Starlink it's like a solar system you can explore freely and you can go in and out of the planet totally freely with no limitation. That's awesome. Problem is when you go inside the planet, there's not really much to do. So I'm not necessarily against that. I just hope it has the depth and detail. I really want a lot of attention to detail, and I want a lot to explore on the planets. So Prime 3 was spread out. I kind of would prefer it to be one massive area to explore because I something about Prime 3 is that like you could explore like a little chunk of the planet. I want to explore the planet. I want to feel like I'm exploring the planet, the whole thing. I want to feel like I get the whole experience of what that planet has to offer. I want to learn about the mystery of that planet. Now, maybe it's a mystery of a solar system. That could still be cool. And maybe there's like, it's all about trying to find like the source of something somewhere in the solar system you don't know. And you're going to these planets to find out. But that feels like they're spreading themselves too thin. So, I mean, in a huge game like, for example, Halo Infinite, right? It's open world, but it's taking place on one location, you know? So, I don't know. I'm not sure. Aaron Raffs. Samus should never have to ask permission to use her own abilities on her own suit. Pointless. Yeah, and that was part of my confusion on that. Why, if you're gonna have a currency, it would make sense for reasons like that, but practically, why shouldn't we won't want Samus to have to ask permission to use her own abilities, right? That's just kind of weird. But if she's buying upgrades that she doesn't have, it's a little different. BRX Orthotic. In spite of the loneliness of Metroid, it would be nice to find native races not extinguished. Yes. We had the Luminoth. It was a moment when we found the Chozo and Dread. Yeah. I'm okay with that. Few and far between, but yes. Zenith. What do you think is next for Zelda? 2D, remake, DLC, movie, possibly? Great question. I haven't given up on DLC for Tears of the Kingdom. It just feels like such a cash cow, you know? I think it would be odd if Nintendo, didn't take advantage of that. I know not everyone wants DLC for Tears of the Kingdom, but I think it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I think there's plenty of material to do DLC for Tears of the Kingdom. So, and I think it's also a great way to, maybe there's a window sometimes next year where Nintendo has a little bit of a gap. DLC could definitely help there. So I think DLC still makes the most sense as the next Zelda thing. I do recognize that there is a rumor from Jeff Grubb that there could be another Zelda announcement this year that's not related to Tears of the Kingdom. I wonder what that would be. I guess part of my confusion here is that while I acknowledge the rumor, if it wasn't for the rumor, I wouldn't be expecting anything but Tears of the Kingdom DLC before we see something else. With the rumor in mind, I kind of still think we're here about Tears of the Kingdom DLC first, and then afterwards we'll get whatever that is. It's possible that Nintendo either A, is not doing DLC for Tears of the Kingdom, which is why we'll hear about something next, or they're saving the DLC closer to the launch of Switch 2 because they want to have something special for Tears of the Kingdom early on that system's life. So they'll have something in between. And then in between, it would be Twilight Princess Wind Waker. I think that's what it would be. So, those are my thoughts on that. I wish I could give you a clear-cut answer, but I'm not sure what's going to happen, right? I just don't have that certainty. But it's either DLC or Twilight Princess Wind Waker. That's what I think it is. Now, I think 2D Zelda. I think we're close to 2D Zelda. Also. But I don't think they're going to release it so close to Tears of the Kingdom. I don't think it's time to announce 2D Zelda so quickly after Tears of the Kingdom. I think we hear about 2D Zelda later. Once after, it would be, 2D Zelda will be announced either sometime next year or even after that, depending on when the DLC comes or if it doesn't come. So that's what I think. Actually, I could even see 2D Zelda coming out 2025. Actually, I'll predict that. I think 2D Zelda comes out in 2025, and we're ways off from then. All right, moving on here. Okay, I feel like I might have skipped some chats from earlier. Well, is this something? See, I would backtrack a little bit. Backtrack because Metroid. Leo, I brought this up earlier. I think the experience of exploring the depths of space would be great for a Metroid game, but there is limitations of achieving FPS fidelity of 60 FPS. Yes, the Metroid Prime games historically have all been at 60 frames per second. So whatever they do with Metroid, it still needs to be at 60 frames per second, which is why it's even more crazy to think that Prime 4 could have big open areas, something that may have physical based lighting like in Prime Remastered and look amazing, yet still have these large, vast expanses at 60 frames per second. I'm very curious what they're doing here. This seems like something we could envision on Switch too. Something on Switch, I don't know. But we could, the thing is, what they may be accomplishing on Switch could perhaps be the greatest technical achievement on Switch. Like, if you thought Prime Remastered was impressive, if you thought Tears of the Kingdom was impressive, if you thought Pikmin 4 was impressive, if you thought Luigi's Mansion 3 was impressive, what Nintendo and Retro Studios may be about to do on Metroid Prime 4, from a technical perspective, may be the most impressive thing we have seen to date. I think that's something I'm going to talk about at some point soon. So that's just something to keep in mind. Thank you for the congratulations, Luigi Kong. Sammy talks about games. Andre's Restart. To counter that point, Bioshock is very isolated as a Metroidvania of sorts, and you can buy stuff. Yes, that is a good point. That is a good point. I haven't played Bioshock. I played a little bit, but not a lot. I haven't beaten it from beginning to end, so it's like I barely played it. But the thing about Bioshock is that, like, you're exploring what was like a past, right? Like, I know that these were like cities, these were civilizations of the past. I guess it's okay. So I guess the important thing here is that there can be a bounty side quest system. There can be a currency, and there can be a system in place where you can buy things to improve upon yourself in some way. But they have to be careful about how they implement this so it makes sense within the Metroid universe. So it makes sense within the context of Metroid Prime 4. That can be done, which is why earlier I was bringing up this idea that there could maybe be some semblance of community on the surface of a planet. And maybe there are some areas where you can access some things that can maybe give you some level of ability. Like that is possible. They just have to be very careful about how they do this so it can fit within the context, because they've never done it before in the Metro game. It would be a very different mechanic. So it's just something very different, but it's not out of the question. It just kind of depends on what mechanics are at play here. Like, is there an ammo system, for example? Do you expand your ammo? For example, missile expansions. Do missile expansions become something you buy as well as something you find? I don't think Metro fans is like that. That might not even be that fun. But it really just depends on what kind of balance they strike. So it is possible. All right, moving on here. Samuel, do you think they'll ever revive the canceled Twilight Princess sequel? No, they don't. They did eventually have a sequel for Wind Waker. I think we could someday start to see remakes of certain Zelda games, like visually look like a modern game, and maybe with some gameplay changes. So if that happens, I think that opens the door for there to be a sequel of some sort. I think you can make the argument that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, depending on how you understand the lore, these games are in a way a sequel to Wind Waker, a sequel to Twilight Princess, a sequel to Ocarina of Time, the sequel to Skyward Sword, because there are a lot of story implications there depending on how you choose to interpret things. So, but if you mean like a direct Twilight Princess sequel where it's the same Link, same world, that's a tough thing. If they do it, I'm all for it. And it might be kind of cool to see that version of Hyrule, that version of Link and world in an open air setting. Like, that would be very interesting and vision as a modern day game. I imagine it would look like that Wii U tech demo, because that's what it was based off of. So that would be cool. But yeah. Moving on here. Am I catching up to the chat? I still have a ways to go. Fecal Shake. A number in the name gives off more indication to upgrade next-gen console. It makes sense if they want to continue this awesome run the Switch is having. I'm glad you agree. Jean call it Nintendo Vision. Now that would be a name. I imagine it'd be VR, or some kind of headset mode be implemented. All right, let's see here. We're starting to run over 2 hours now, so I'm gonna say we're running towards the end of the Q&A. So any final questions or posts you want to bring up, please do so now. I'm gonna try and get to as many as I can next few minutes, but I will continue. All right, cool. Fecal Shake, nice. First video I ever saw of you had aquatic ambience, and with your level-headed logic discussion in the video, I became an instant subscriber. That is awesome. One, I'm glad you're a fan of aquatic ambience, but also two, I am glad you perceive my discussion as level-headed logic. I appreciate that a lot, actually, because I mean, everyone has opinions, right? Everyone has opinions, and everyone's entitled to their opinions. And I think for me, you know, how I go with my content, right? I think if someone at face value, they can make assumptions about what my content is. And if they don't actually listen in, they may perceive me a certain way, right? Because they're just, it's, biases, right? Judging a book by its cover. But when I go at my content, obviously, if you pay attention to my content, I do tend to cover things that are relevant to Nintendo in modern day, right? Like, if there's some big news on a big game or potential big news because it's a rumor, there's a really good chance I'm going to talk about it if it's something that I care about. That's something that I think is important for the things that I'm invested in, right? Like, I'm not a big Animal Crossing fan, so I didn't really make any Animal Crossing content. I had some interest. I think I made 1 or 2 videos, and that was it. But when I go at making a video, even though it's based on news, I try to come at it from a perspective that's a little different. I try to, I assess and I try to see what I understand of something. And if I realize something interesting, and I try to point that out there, right? Like today with the Mario Bros. Wonder video, that video, I decided to make that because there is some recent news. And depending on what videos you watch, you may hear basically the same information. And I mean, I made the same points as other people because that's what the information suggested. However, I tried to look a little deeper into it, and I made other observations of things that I noticed that I have not seen other people talk about. So, like, for example, I made mention that I think that the Toad, or rather the Goomba that's wearing the blue Toad hat, the promotional material, I think that's actually a transformed Toad. I think Blue Toad transformed into that. There's this news of like transformation power-ups. I think that's a transformation power-up. So, but yeah, I try to go in from a logical perspective, making arguments, but considering perspectives, but also having fun with it. Like, I'm not trying to be like super like strict about everything, and everything has to be super like, super professional, super adult, like, oh, this is that, like we do try to analyze and be critical, but this is about video games. This is about things that are exciting and fun. Like, we got to be able to live a little, right? So I think it's okay to get excited and just kind of envision possibilities, even if they may or may not happen, just with that thought in mind that, hey, this is speculation. We don't know what's going to occur for sure. We'll see. If it makes sense, great. We might believe it what's more likely. But if it doesn't make sense, then maybe it won't happen, or vice versa. But thank you, Fecal Shake. I'm very, very appreciative that you feel that way. Captain Doge, hello. Your question tonight is, how am I doing? I'm good. I think lately, right, being fully forthcoming, I've tried to become like a full-time YouTuber, right? And I have a ways to go, right? But I mean, I am treating this as a full-time job now. Like, this is what I do for work. But am I in a position to where I can like afford a house and support a family by myself. I'm not there yet. But I am treating this as a growing business. But my point is that I started doing this, going for trying to attempt full time. November, I started and really started getting into it December of last year. So it's been it's August right now, so 8ish, 9 months. And you had the Tears of the Kingdom hype, which really boosted things. And I still talk about Tears of the Kingdom. It's still a big part of my channel, right? I still make multiple videos on Tears of the Kingdom a week, but there has been a downward trend of viewership since the Tears of the Kingdom train is starting to die down. And it's also kind of slow time in general. So viewership numbers are actually down. And as a YouTuber, that would be something disappointing, right? And it definitely is bothering me, right? For multiple reasons, right? One, because, I want to continue to improve. And then other, I want to, I want to be able to make a living. But what's interesting is that, especially this last week, I kind of feel like I buckled down a little bit. I was like, all right, it's getting harder to succeed, but I'm not going to use that as a reason to give up, but quite the opposite. I'm going to do better, right? I'm going to try to execute more. I'm going to try and to take things to another level. I'm going to try to research more, discover more, be more consistent, try out new ideas, these different things, right? And what's cool is that this week, right, I've talked about Tears of the Kingdom. I've made a video talking about several different theories or mysteries about it, which is very exciting. I have another one that I'm already putting together. May come up by the end of the weekend. I don't want to make any promises on that, but I have another one that's coming soon that I'm very excited about. We have multiple Metroid Prime 4 videos this week because there's information on it. There's all these Switch reports, which is very exciting. We're getting news on Mario Bros. Wonder. There are news about 3D Mario. Still playing Pikmin 4. That's still fresh. That's still awesome. There are still things I want to talk about with that. We got the Pokemon Presents. There's this debate about what's coming out next year. There's a DLC that I'm kind of excited about now. Now we've seen the latest trailer. Obviously, there's that controversy about the performance and all, but there's all these different things. Mario games, Zelda games, Metroid games, Pokemon, Pikmin. There's even some Xenoblade news recently. There's a lot to talk about right now. And while technically viewership is lower, I'm personally excited because I don't want to be just a Zelda tuber. I want to be well balanced. I want to talk about Nintendo as a whole because I care about Nintendo as a whole. And it just now is almost more exciting because it's kind of I feel like there's a lot of things that we can kind of really get excited about and speculate and talk about and dig deeper into. This Metroid Prime 4 stuff, I'm very excited about it. Very excited about it. So, we've talked about it all night, pretty much. And we're still just scratching the surface. And that's, as I said earlier, it's very much kind of like Tears of the Kingdom, where there's a lot to talk about. And I feel like we're just scratching the surface for so long. So I'm good. I got work to do. I have a vacation coming up. But I'm good. I'm having a good time doing this. Aaron, LMAO, your Samus wall icon is next to your wall outlet, so Samus can power herself back in when low on energy. That's it. It would be funny if I could maybe put some lights around it or something to kind of play to that idea. Santa talks about games. I do agree with you. I want one planet like Talon in Prime 1 and increases immersiveness. It's easier to be more detailed and in depth if you focus on one world. Ultimately, I imagine it's gonna be the same length of game, right? I'm not talking about less. I'm talking about just more concise, more in depth. So, if they have the resources to do it with multiple planets, that's okay too. What I love about Metroid Prime 1 and 2 is I really got the sense that I was diving deep into these planets and discovering the inner secrets of the world. With Prime 3, there was a little bit of that, which I really liked, but it was lesser because it was more spread out. So if they can accomplish that for multiple planets, then go for it. But only if they can accomplish it. If they can't, then let's focus on one. Let's make it as amazing as possible. Brian Doe, are we going to talk about how it looks like I was right when it comes to Metroid Prime 4? How it's going to have the same massive open world and vibe as Red Dead 2? You changed your mind on this. Well, I don't want to use open world. I don't think it's going to be open world technically, right? That's kind of been a talking point, like not open world, large open areas that some may confuse to be open world, like a Xenoblade game. But it's going to be more. I mean, like Joey earlier brought up, like Tomb Raider might be a good example, or God of War might be a good example. Worlds that there's a lot to explore in, beautiful environments, intricate environments, with lots to do in them, lots to find and explore, and get yourself lost and immersed in. I haven't played Red Dead Redemption 2, but I've seen it. That's a cool game, but I don't think it's going to be like that. But I also haven't played it, so maybe I'm a bit off on that. Ray Spence, I think the scan visor should work the same way as Starlink. Each scan will give you a bit more details on the items, planets, fauna. Yes, we're on the same page. Totally, scan visor. I hope they don't get rid of the scan visor. It should be used to really analyze and learn more about the world. Definitely. Let's see here. Having hope. I'm hoping for Minish Cap remake or remaster. That would be so awesome. Minish Cap remake would be neat. I'm okay with just playing Minish Cap on NSO though. I wouldn't mind if we just get like a new 2D Zelda, but I'll take a remake. I won't say no. I think I like this idea from Giancarlo. Nintendo do a Torna future connected style of DLC for Tears of the Kingdom, answering many of the game's plot, lore, glaring points. Yes, I want a big area to explore. Heck, basically just add a giant landmass in the sky with more islands. Maybe open up another pocket in the depths. Maybe also have a giant island surface to the east or something. Just add some bigger areas to explore and more side quests, and just like give us something that's like an additional 30 to 40 hours of gameplay. That's like an actual campaign. That's what I want. That's what the Xenoblade games are with their DLC. They're just actual new adventures. Not as big, but they are substantial. Something like that for the DLC for Tears of the Kingdom. That would be amazing. A whole other new area to explore, of a series of other new areas to explore that add several hours of extra gameplay. That would be special. Captain Doe, 60 FPS is the Retro Studio standard. They even had this during the development where if the game did anything below 60 FPS, it would beep and they'd go back in to make sure it would run at 60. I love that, right? So, funny enough, right now there's 60 people watching. Guys, if you like to stream, that'd be super helpful. But it'd be funny if every time we go under 60 viewers, it starts beeping. No, it got to be at least at 60 viewers, right? The same way. But I would love it if they continue that perspective. Like, no matter what, you don't do something if it can't be done at 60 frames per second. Now, the weird part is that they're developed with Switch 2 and Switch in mind, getting this all to run on Switch at 60. And don't making anything else if you can't do 60 on Switch, you don't do it. So then how do you improve on Switch 2? Well, I mean, better textures, higher resolution. But if you start to add more things, that's where it gets a little, But I mean, I don't know if they do like some sort of custom thing, it might be kind of a big deal. Nintendo Prime with another super chat. Thank you for that super chat, buddy. I need to head to bed. Long day tomorrow, but you keep kicking arse. Your content is one of my biggest inspirations. Thank you, buddy. I really appreciate that. And that means a lot. Nate has always been very praiseworthy of me. He's definitely super helpful in my growth and guiding me. And I very much appreciate that. Hearing you say that you think my content is good, because there's definitely times that I doubt if my content is good. I definitely, I doubt that. I wonder, am I doing good enough, right? So appreciate that. Thank you, and get some rest. Guy you don't know. Congrats on reaching 30,000. Something I've been curious to know for a while is this. Do you still yourself being an avid fan of Nintendo or video games in general 10 years from now? 100%. Yeah, I don't really. Yeah, I don't envision that ever stopping at all. Um, I've always been a Nintendo fan my entire life. Not gonna change. No, it's not gonna change. Um, I mean, especially now, I'm trying to make YouTube my career. So, like, I talk about Nintendo. Like, that's what I do. So, I have a hard time envisioning that stopping. Now, obviously, 10 years is a long time from now. I don't know. A lot can change between now and then. But I was a Nintendo fan 10 years ago. I was a Nintendo fan 20 years ago. I wasn't a Nintendo fan 30 years ago. Spoiler alert, I'm 31. But I was a baby. Does that count? I'll tell you one of my first memories is of the Super Nintendo, which came out in 1991. I don't think I was a Nintendo fan year one. Probably not. But I do have my first gaming memories were with the Super Nintendo. It wasn't my personal system, but I do remember seeing my dad play. I do remember trying. I remember that. It's very vague, but I remember that. So I've basically been a Nintendo fan my entire life. Not saying I'm only Nintendo. I'll play other games on other systems, but it is mostly Nintendo. But I'm a fan of just things in general. Like I love basketball. I love anime. I love going out. And I just love doing lots of things in life, right? I love animals and exploring and there's a lot. But yeah, I'm going to be a Nintendo fan for life. And I also think, in terms of video games, I think sometimes what it's maybe hard for somebody to wrap their head around is because our parents, right? The people before us, our prior generation, a lot of them may have played games or got invested in certain like nerd media at some point in their lives, but it was just a phase for them or just a brief moment, a stint. The generation we've grown up as is very different. We're a lot more acclimated to technology, video games, anime, movies, comics, manga, all this stuff, right? Like cosplay is what I was going to say earlier. All these different things. It's become a lot more normalized, right? They released earlier today. They released that new Pokemon like short animated series where it's talking about like the adventures of a girl moving to a new school where it's a Pokemon club. And what's cool about it is that it's kind of demonstrating this world where Pokemon's very mainstream, very normalized. Playing Pokemon isn't like a rare nerd thing. It's like, oh, this is what kids do. And it's kind of something I've tried to really push. Like, hey, no, video games are a normal thing. It's actually why I don't like the term gamer. Obviously, I mean, it's a word. It's okay to be used. I'm not saying I've never used the term, but I don't like, and if this is how you feel, I'm not saying you're wrong to feel this way. It's just my own personal feeling. But I don't love when we refer to ourselves as, oh, we are gamers, like as if it's like kind of like a special group of people, because I believe gaming is something that should be normalized across the board. I don't think playing video games is something that only a select group of people should do. I think it's something that people should do. And when I think about games, I don't think about just video games. I enjoy board games. I enjoy sports games. Like I just enjoy games, right? And I just think I think people should enjoy games. Like having fun is important in life, and games is a great way to have fun. So I think everyone should play games. I think everyone should be a gamer in some way, shape, or form. So I say that to just get the point that, while growing up, it may be hard to think of ourselves as older people enjoying video games the way we do now. But I also think it's important to recognize that we are a part of a newer generation that grew up with this as more of a mainstream thing. And as we age, a lot of us are not going to stop. And what's going to happen is that most of our society and culture is going to be aware that this is just a normal thing. This is not something that only young people do. It's something that people do. So, yeah, I'm going to be a Nintendo fan. I'm going to be a gamer 10 years from now. I'm going to be playing games until the day I die. I think everyone should be that way. So, I think if we don't play games, that's a problem. I think you are not allowing yourself to enjoy life as much as you can if you're not playing games. I'm not saying you should spend hundreds of hours playing video games. I'm just saying you should be open to playing games. So, yeah. Hopefully that answers your question. Mike Odyssey, thank you. Thank you for the congratulations, buddy. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate that. I think this is from earlier, but Nintendo Prime viewership isn't everything, my friend. And I know it's easy for me to say that, but at 30K, it was a dream to even get 5,000 views on a video. It's important you're passionate and enjoy it. Views will come. True. Very true. I am passionate about this. I guess my fear is, can I continue? So I don't want to stop. And that's the thing, right? Like, in order to continue, the views need to come. Because if views don't come, I can't do this as a job, But growth is consistent. So, we're doing okay. Aaron Raz, I love your content, and you so try to be one with your viewers. Keep up with the great work. I love your content, and you so try to be one with your viewers. Keep up with the great work. Okay, now I read it correctly. I will do my best. Thank you. Charles Trudell, cheers, man. Thank you, buddy. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate that. All right. I think I'm close to the catching up to the chat now. Yes, Captain Doge. I came out the womb with a Nintendo controller. This is true. It's fact. Having hope. I'll be in my 90s still playing Zelda. There you go. Yeah. Like, imagine this. Like, years from now, there are going to be homes with a whole bunch of old people who are going to be in rooms. Dude. Okay. All right. So, you know how, like, a lot of old people don't want to go in homes, right? Because it's kind of boring. But, like, I'm not saying I want to go in a home, right? I don't want to ever get to that point, but I don't know where, I don't know what's going to happen 60s, 90, however long it takes for me to get to that point. But right, like, how cool. I wouldn't be against the idea if I'm already done living my life, right? Like, I'm already retired. I'm just living out my days, relaxing. If my days relaxing are just hanging out with the homies, playing Smash Brothers and Mario Kart and Mario Party all day, that's what you could do if you live in a home with other old people. It's just a giant community of people that are the same age group. That's basically like college again. Like, in college, I just played Smash Bros. And Mario Kart with people all the time. We went out to eat all the time. We hung out. Like, being 90 might not be so bad. Just saying. So, I hope it takes me longer to have to be put into a home, though. But, well, that 90 is pretty good age. Sammy, let's do some Switch 2 speculation. I am winding down, buddy. I don't know. I mean, if you throw out an idea at me, I will address it, but I'm closing out here. Well, I missed this one. Kill ABK 123. Thank you for that super chat. Keep going, brother. 30K. Talk soon. Hashtag old work buddy. I think I know who you are. Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate that. Thank you. All right, awesome. Guy you don't know. Yes, you answered my question, then some. LOL, thanks. You're welcome. You're welcome. BMX Athletic, I've been with you since Prime Master drop, and you are my go-to. Doing a great job. Thank you. I very much appreciate that. Thank you. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for everyone who stopped by. Thank you for everyone who has enjoyed the stream. I am aware that I tend to do things longer than I expect, but I legitimately was thinking the Q&A would be about an hour. And here we are. It's been 2 hours and 40 minutes. And now I'm checking the chat. I'm seeing Samuel said something, and I'm going to read it. And I may regret it because the stream may end up taking longer than I expect. This is the last chat. This is it. I say that, but one of you may surprise me. But anyway, Samuel talks about games. Andre's restart. All right, I'll say something specific. I think it's both 3D Mario and Prime 4 on launch day to cover the hardcore and casual fan base. Also throw in some next-gen patches. I've seen this idea before. I don't agree because I think 3D Mario and Prime 4 overlap too much. But I will play both. I will enjoy both. I have no idea how I'll be able to cover both appropriately if they come out at the same time. That would be miserable. Like, it's just not possible. Like, covering just Tears of the Kingdom when I did. Because the thing is, the way I'm going to handle 3D Mario, Metroid Prime 4, because those are like So, Zelda, Mario, and Metroid are my three big, most favorite things, right? So, the main line entries for each of those come out the same day. That's crazy. Like, imagine all the work I did with Tears of the Kingdom times 2. First off, I worked a lot. I don't know how you guys may be this, but like, the amount of time and energy and effort I put into Tears of the Kingdom was constant. It was hard. It was arduous. It was challenging. I needed rest. To multiply that by 2, I just don't think that's happening. I also don't think it's good for Nintendo. I think they should space it out a little bit. That's my perspective, but we'll see. Anyways, thank you all for listening and watching. If you could like the stream, that'd be super helpful. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed, please do so. Help me on this goal to reach 50,000 subscribers, so we can continue to talk about Nintendo until we're 106 years old or whatever, however long it takes. But thank you, everyone. I'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye.